Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto beyond Omega level mutant. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Raidox2 and link in the description and support writer. Let's start the video. Abandon all hope, ye who enter here. A brief warning, that was all that was written atop the gated entrance to this hellish hellhole. Those who looked upon the gates of gold were given the impression that what lay ahead was a paradisal world, its charm was irresistible and filled you with a sort of urgency that coaxed you into walking through its doors. Yet what lay beyond couldn't have been any different, all that remained was an ever-expansive realm of fire and brimstone. One that slowly but surely twisted even the purest of men into soulless unsightly creatures bound to this dead world. There was no escape, no purpose to its existence besides to keep those who were unfortunate enough to find themselves in its company trapped for all of eternity. Such was the fate for one Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto had trudged the plains of this unknown world for what had felt like eons. Nothing existed here besides demons and apparitions that seemingly took great pleasure in his futile efforts to escape. He had tried everything that had come to his mind, even destroyed this world a few times, but was seemingly always returned back to those infernal gates over and over again, like he was trapped in some sort of sick twisted game. The events that had unfolded to bring him here were still a little bit hazy, it had all happened so fast. All he remembered was her mocking smile, and then a powerful pull as he was thrust into an ever-encompassing darkness. Naruto stumbled upon a hilltop, his gaze fell upon a large rock inscribed with a leaf insignia, and he let out a terribly sad sigh. "I'm back here again, huh? I wonder if you would have found your way out of here, Sasuke." Kagaya had played them all, or at least was prepared to lose from the very beginning. Her final actions before she had been returned back to her prison was one marred with blood. All killing ash bones. The pinnacle of Kagaya's deadly will, the bones were capable of killing anybody with just a mere scratch. In the darkness of her void, it was impossible to detect the dozens of bone spears that she had thrown. Naruto had only survived due to simple luck, they had all missed him by a mere inch. Red spiraling eyes stared softly at the grave of his rival and friend, he could still remember the bloody sight of Sasuke dying in front of him. Those fleeting words. And his promise to return home and change things for the better. Who would have thought that this would become the one time that he could not keep his promise? Wah wah. Naruto was snapped out of his stupor by the distinct sound of a child crying. He immediately found himself rushing towards the sound, hoping that it was as he had heard. To his surprise, in the middle of a clearing lay a blonde boy no older than 6 years old. Naruto landed gracefully behind the boy, his Rinnegan narrowed slightly, wondering if this place was playing tricks on him again. "Hello," Naruto said. The young child spun around. Hands stretched outwards in a fashion that looked comical, but nonetheless proved to show that he was far from helpless. Naruto's truth-seeking balls instantly wrapped around his body as powerful rays of energy shot out from the heavens and zoomed towards him with impossible accuracy. They blew his shield apart. He was forced to substitute himself with a rock to get out of the blast zone that literally atmosed everything in its way. What is Kami's name was this boy? He had never seen a child wield that much power. Naruto raised his hand in surrender before he could be assaulted once more. Hey, I'm not here to hurt you." He heard the boy sniffle slightly and Naruto made his way cautiously to him. "Are you okay?" Home, I want to go home." He said softly. "Can you take me home, mister?" "Naruto, I'm Naruto." He gave the boy his outstretched hand, which he took gratefully. "What's your name?" "Franklin. Franklin Richards." He whimpered out. "How did you get here, Franklin?" Naruto asked. I was just trying to show my dad I could control my powers." Naruto sighed, so he ended up here by accident and now he couldn't escape as well. Great, how would he break it the boy that there was no escaping here? "Come on," Naruto relented, "it's too dangerous out here." Franklin snorted, completely affronted by the comment that there was anything more powerful than he was. "I'm the strongest." Franklin huffed. "No one can." Naruto immediately grabbed Franklin as the earth below them shattered, fire rose from the ground like a geyser, and a deep guttural roar echoed from the depths below. Naruto and Franklin landed some clicks away from the large crater, steam and smoke obscured their vision, but they could still feel its presence. Clap clap. Imagine my surprise when I sensed a reality warper in my dimension. A pale green-haired man dressed like some sort of jester with a cape. The man's face was permanently twisted in a sort of sickening smile. And a young child, nonetheless. I couldn't possibly resist not revealing myself. He laughed maniacally, green fire danced around his body as he raised one of his bony hands. The world shifted, the entity immediately appeared in front of them. Naruto's tried to kick him, but his body just phased through. He fired a powerful psionic blast that sent Naruto spiraling away. Franklin murmured, "Nightmares, you're not real." "Oh, but I am very much real." The apparition cackled. "And you are going to be mine." Franklin felt his body freeze as the man's eyes glowed with power. He could feel the entity enter his mind. He tried his best to fight against the powerful telepathic attack, but to no avail. Franklin's body had been consumed by the ethereal flame of the apparition-like entity. The entity in Franklin's body stretched his new body, testing it out. Not quite as steady as I had hoped, but it will do quite nicely. He turned towards Naruto, a mocking smile played on his lips, and you failed once more, Uzumaki. I'm not surprised really, after all this time, you had yet to truly understand what this place is. Naruto growled, I don't care. His chakra exploded outwards as he took on his Sage of Six Paths mode, get out of the kid, or I will kill you. Franklin sneered, such power, it's quite sad that you already have that infernal fox inside your stomach, otherwise you would have made a great host. He raised his hand, the Rasen shuriken heading towards him was simply willed out of my existence. Naruto had never seen anything like it, 1 second it was there, and the next it was gone. Franklin raised his hand. Time froze. Franklin approached Naruto's prone form, it's unfortunate that you must die. He conjured one of his blades and stabbed straight into Naruto's heart before he allowed time to resume once more. Blood pooled out of Naruto's mouth as he gasped in surprise, runes spread out from the blade and across his body. He felt his body begin to shut down, his healing factor was useless against the possessed Franklin's warping powers. He grinned bloodily as his Rinshuriken spun one last time before his body crumbled to the ground, dead. Franklin drew his blade from Naruto's chest, he gave the Uzumaki one castaway look. Nothing could defeat him in this body, the other lords would not stand a chance against him. Soon, Nightmare would rule the underworld, and then, he would go on to rule the entire universe. Where are you going? Franklin heard the softest of whispers behind him, he spun around to see him staring at the hateful gaze of Uzumaki Naruto. He couldn't possibly react in time as Naruto's palm slammed straight into his stomach, chakra pulsed into his body, and Naruto activated the Yang seal, the possessed Franklin screamed in pain. How? Naruto grinned foxily, guess you made an error allowing me to fight all your creatures all these years, I've become accustomed to dealing with ghosts like you. Nightmare screamed in anguish as Naruto's Yang seal forcefully excavated him from Franklin's body. Naruto's Rinshuriken spun wildly, the apparition turned towards Franklin's unconscious body and began to fly towards it, intent on possessing him once more. Yuinjutsu. Uchikisari Tesu. Naruto slammed his hands together as he completed the technique. Nightmare felt a powerful tug as dozens of ethereal blue chains shot out from beneath Naruto's feet, he tried to cut them down, but they kept multiplying, attaching themselves to his body. Nightmare felt himself being dragged by adamantine-like chains. Naruto grabbed a large scroll strapped to his back and unwound it, revealing a dense and complicated seal array. You will pay for this, Uzumaki. I will return. The entity screamed as he was swallowed into the seal in the scroll. Naruto had no doubt that the being would escape eventually, but his primary concern was Franklin. Franklin looked at Naruto with wonder, can you teach me how to do that when we get back home? Naruto shook his head in amusement at how quickly the boy had just shaken off being possessed. The world began to shake rapidly, Franklin let out a cry as he fell to the ground once more, he knew this feeling well, it was the beginning of a dimensional shift. The realm was beginning to break apart without its ruler, and soon both Franklin and Naruto found themselves blinded by a powerful white light. Franklin closed his eyes and used all of his willpower to wish that he was back with his parents. Dr. Strange prided himself in being the master of all that was arcane, it was after all his duty as Earth Sorcerer Supreme to ensure that the mystical never interfered with the mundane. His power and expertise were sought all over the planet, if there was ever anything magical going on, he was the guy to call. What do you mean, you can't find him? Susan Storm shouted angrily, whatever took him was mystical in nature. Dr. Strange sighed, it is impossible to detect a reality warper, Susan. And your son vanished off his own accord. Reed Richards hummed, and what of your magical instruments, do they not give you the whereabouts of our son? The Sorcerer Supreme sighed, such rituals take time, we must have patience. Susan wasn't having any of it, her son could be lost in the middle of nowhere and they weren't doing anything. Johnny Storm gently held his sister and whispered words of encouragement, he's going to be fine, Sue. Remember we're dealing with Franklin here. It did little to soothe her worries, but Susan calmed down a little. The sanctum chimed, Dr. Strange felt a powerful wave of demonic magic erupt from the orb of Agamotto. This wasn't good, it could only mean that something major had happened in one of the dimensions belonging to the Hell Lords. He rushed towards the orb, only to find himself stunned at what he saw. By the mists of Hoggoth, how is such a thing possible? He questioned. The dream dimension had been shattered completely, someone or something had managed to defeat Nightmare in his own world. And they were coming straight here. The multicolored rift blew apart in the middle of the room, a blinding light spread throughout the room, forcing them all to cover their eyes. Doctor Strange raised a barrier in time as he felt a sudden spike in energy. Two figures were spat out of the rift at high velocity. He heard them groan in pain as they collided against the invisible barrier. The light eventually died down, revealing who the two intruders were. Susan Storm was the first to notice that one of them was Franklin. "Franklin," she shouted and rushed towards her son. Franklin opened up his eyes at the unforgettable voice of his mother. He smiled brightly. Yes, I did it, Naruto," he exclaimed. Susan scooped him up from Naruto's arms, smiling and hugging her son. "Oh, thank God, Franklin. You had us worried." She stared at him sternly. "Don't ever do that again." Franklin nodded tearily. "Is Mr. Naruto okay, Mommy?" he asked. Susan peeked over her son's shoulder to see the unconscious form of the teen. "He saved me from the monster." Gasp. Naruto let out a strangled gasp for air. His mind spun wildly from the spiraling effect of interdimensional travel. "Son of a bitch, never again. I'm never doing that again." As he came to, he found himself in the presence of four bizarrely dressed people and an orange rock-like being. "Who are you people and where am I?" he demanded, his chakra flexed outwards in an intimidating fashion. It was moments like this that made Doctor Strange hate his job. Naruto frowned intensely as he sat comfortably in the presence of one Sorcerer Supreme and the Fantastic Four. He had apparently arrived in a different world, not surprising, considering that Franklin didn't at all appear as if he had come from the elemental nations. Doctor Strange had been the first to greet him, casting a quick charm on him so that they could all understand each other. They had told him who they were, where he was and what had happened to him. Naruto had apparently been trapped in a dream dimension. Doctor Strange had said that it could only be assessed through the astral plane and that it was a freak accident that his physical form had gotten trapped there. In return, he had told them everything, or at least as much as he was comfortable with revealing. He told them where he had come from, how he had been trapped in that hellhole for more than a lifetime, and how Franklin and he had escaped. "So I can't go back home?" Naruto asked. Reed Richards said, "Traveling between different universes is very risky, especially without knowing where you are going. It's like rolling a dice, only the amount of universes in the multiverse are infinite, so the chances of you landing in your universe is almost zero. And without exact coordinates, even if you did somehow reach your universe, the chances you'll just be floating around in space." Reed thought it was better to keep quiet about how even if Naruto landed back home, it was more than likely that he would end up in the distant future rather than at the time that he had left it. Naruto buried his face in his hand and let out a tired and weary sigh. "Then it was all for nothing." Reed nodded. "I'm sorry I can't be of more help." Susan nudged her husband and Reed quickly added, "Whilst I cannot give you what you seek, all I can give you is a place to stay until you become more accustomed to life on this world." Johnny Storm nodded. "It's totally cool with me, anybody who saves my nephew is good in my book." Franklin jumped up and down excitedly, "And you can show me how you did that thing with your eyes." Susan Storm looked at her son with amusement. She had never seen him so excited to learn something, though she was also certainly intrigued by this new addition's power set. Doctor Strange sat silently, judging the boy in front of him with intense scrutiny. Barely older than 17, Naruto Uzumaki had been through enough suffering to last 100 lifetimes. The fact that he had not gone insane from it all was a miracle in itself. Strange couldn't imagine anybody lasting in the dream dimension for that long without losing themselves to nightmares games. The part of him feared that he was letting someone who could potentially pose a huge threat to them into their world. The boy was reluctant to give them any historical context of his land beside a brief rundown. He had come from a place called the Elemental Nations. The dimension was run down with war and strife. It was primitive and militaristic as opposed to this world. From what little information that he had been given, it was easy to surmise that Naruto had been trained from a very young age, a weaponized child soldier that knew nothing besides to fight. Naruto's eyes flickered towards the silent sorcerer. He knew that look well. He had seen all the time on the old man Tsuchikage's face. "I know what you're thinking," Naruto said. "You're wondering if I am a threat to your world." He made no indication to answer, but Naruto could surmise by the sorcerer's grimace. "I don't blame you or anything, I'd probably do the same if I was Hokage. The answer is no, I'm not a threat to you or your world. You may not believe this, but I'm tired of fighting even if it's all I know." Doctor Strange merely nodded, his magic sensed no deception from him. Johnny Storm slapped his hands together. "Good, great. Let's get going then, I'm bored and all of these artifacts give me the creeps." He shuddered as he stared at the skull on the desk that had green mist billowing out of its mouth. The Fantastic Four and Franklin began to make their way out of the room. Doctor Strange said, "I will continue to research how you ended up in the dream dimension. Perhaps it may lead to a way you can get back home." Naruto gave the sorcerer a thankful nod and headed out of the room. "Oh, before I forget." He threw a scroll towards Doctor Strange. "You can start by asking the demon." Doctor Strange appeared stupefied at the prospect that an entity like Nightmare could be sealed in a flimsy piece of paper. He wondered how the world would react to the presence of a new superpower. Once the young Uzumaki stepped out of the sanctum, there would be no stopping the world from sensing his presence. That vast amount energy brimming within in the boy was akin to a vast ocean. All around the world and beyond, they felt Naruto's power as he took his first step into this new world. Xavier's Institute. Charles Xavier awoke abruptly to the blaring alarms of Cerebro. The machine created to detect mutants had been specifically designed to pick up signatures through his telepathy. On occasion, however, it would set itself off in the presence of a large enough mutant signature. The professor frowned slightly at the sound of the alarm. The last time something like this had happened was Jean. "Professor." There was a brief rap at his door before he was greeted by the presence of one of his most trusted companions. Aurora Monroe aka Strom stood by the door, a tight grimace playing open her lips. "How bad?" he inquired. "You're going to want to see for yourself." Storm replied whilst walking over to his side. She helped the professor up and into his wheelchair. "Logan and Hank are already there and I've instructed the students to stay in their rooms." "Thank you, Aurora." She grabbed the handles of the wheelchair and they began to make their way down to the room containing Cerebro. The machine was located in the basement, far into the left wing where nobody actually ventured and was seemingly always somehow safe from the constant barrage of attacks that befall the manor. Aurora came to a stop in front of the door, allowing for the biometric scanner to finish scanning them. "Accepted 00 Professor X01 Storm." A metallic voice echoed throughout the hallway. They heard a soft creak and the door slide open. Aurora escorted him into the hollow chamber. Cerebro was currently situated in the middle being tinkered with by the resident genius, Beast. The professor spoke, "Report." Logan growled, Beast saying that it was a false reading. Aurora grimaced, she had never heard of such a thing happening. "Is such a thing possible, Professor?" "I'm afraid not, my dear." Xavier replied, "Mutant signatures are distinct compared to other superhumans. Cerebro was designed specifically to detect them." He stared at the large blurry furry form of Beast dangling from the ceiling. Noticing their presence, Beast flipped himself over and landed in front of them. Cerebro detected a signature, however it's unlike any I've ever seen. Beast fiddled with his glasses as he passed a tablet over to the professor. Charles hummed to himself whilst he read the contents. This was indeed very interesting. "Well, let's see if we can locate the source." He rolled towards the machine and placed Cerebro upon his head. He closed his eyes, allowing the voices of billions of people to flow through him. His mind traveled throughout the city of New York until he located the source, a teenager around the same age as Jean. He sent a soft probe to try and investigate who this entity was, only to find himself hitting an impenetrable mental barrier. Xavier winced in pain from the impact. He could feel an immense amount of energy humming in the astral plane. Purple eyes spun hatefully, "Get out of my head." Charles' astral self was consumed by a wave of energy. His actual body began to jolt and seize from it all. Aurora removed the helmet in a hurry. "Are you alright?" The professor nodded, slowly trying to regain his mental bearings. What kind of assault was that? He wasn't sure, but it certainly wasn't telepathic. Logan asked, "What happened?" Charles frowned, "It's definitely a mutant, but I fear I may have just left a bad impression on the young man." "Is he in any danger?" Aurora said. "He's in safe hands, for now. We shall speak to him come another time. I must go converse with an old friend." Logan and Aurora were both interested who this new mutant was to leave such an impression on the normally stoic professor. Naruto had never seen buildings this tall in his life, nor this many people in one place. It was almost surreal that such a place could exist. Konoha had boasted a population of around 100,000. This little portion of the city held more people than the entire Land of Fire. "This is us," Reed spoke as they came to a halt in front of a rather tall building. Naruto asked in slight amazement, "You own all of this?" Johnny smirked, "Just the top 5 floors." Naruto jumped back slightly as Johnny's whole body caught on fire. "See you guys there." Naruto watched as he streaked across the sky like a comet, a part of him wondering how fire could give someone the ability to fly. The thing grunted, always the show-off. The group headed upstairs by some sort of metal contraption that Naruto had never seen before. It was intriguing how humans in this world had developed technology to make up for their lack of power, reminding him of the time he went to the land of snow and fought against those snow shinobi with their elaborate chakra suits. The elevator pinged and opened slowly. Naruto was greeted to a rather lavish foyer with all sorts of expensive-looking ornaments and technological gadgets whose function he couldn't fathom. Reed said, "Susan, why don't you show Naruto his room? I have some research that I have to do." Susan rolled her eyes but made no effort to argue with her husband. "Come on, Naruto, I'll show you to your room." They all left the elevator except Reed, who headed up to his laboratory to no doubt explore his ideas. Susan leads him through a series of corridors towards the apartment complex portion of the building. "This is your room, Naruto." She gave him a bright smile, "You can stay as long as you want whilst you try to get yourself adjusted to life here." "Thank you." He replied softly, entering his room. He was surprised to see that it was indeed rather spacious and it even had a bathroom attached to it. But before he could explore there was something that he needed to do. He sat in the middle of the room in a lotus form as he entered his mindscape. He came across the gated door that held Kurama. The fox had been in an induced slumber ever since he had entered the dream dimension. Nightmare definitely lived up to his name. He had managed to keep Kurama stuck in a dream loop. Ever hear a Biju whimper? Naruto shuddered just thinking about what could make Kurama so afraid. He allowed his chakra to filter into the seal and with one sudden burst, dispelled the weak green mist surrounding Kurama. Red eyes flew open and the Kyuubi let out a gargantuan roar, "I'm going to kill you." He started swiping all over the place, perhaps still believing that he was still in the dream sequence. "Kurama," Naruto said. The Kyuubi turned around to face his host, his eyes still weary from the eternally long nap. "What happened?" he asked. "All I remember was Kagaya sending us and that Uchiha bastard through a portal." And then he growled, "Where is that green-haired motherfucker? I want to skin him alive." "I sealed him." The Kyuubi peered at Naruto, almost stepping back in shock as he saw his host wield the same eyes as his father. "You've missed a lot." He answered knowing that Kurama didn't have to ask for an explanation, he could simply access his memories to view what happened to his slumber. "I'm sorry," Kurama said honestly, his host had suffered just as much as he had under the machinations of whatever that being was. "So, we're stuck here, what are you going to do?" Naruto gave a sad smile, "I have no idea, all I really wanted to be was Hokage. That had always been his main goal, it was cruel that fate ripped it away from him when he was so close." "You could always go back to becoming a shinobi, humans will never really run out of people to hire to do their dirty work," Kurama added. "I guess we'll see," Naruto replied, there was too much he didn't know about this place. In the short while that he arrived here, he met a kid who could make Kagaya's ability to warp reality appear infantile, a so-called sorcerer that could wield magic, and a group of 4 superpowered individuals. This world wasn't just much larger than his own, it was more complex and at first sight seemed much more dangerous. Kurama huffed, "How dull. I wish you could have kept that demon for yourself, I wanted to see how much it enjoys getting tortured." Naruto deadpanned, "It's literally a ghost, how can you torture a ghost?" Kurama let out a grunt of acknowledgement, he slipped back into Naruto's mindscape needing some rest to get himself back to 100%. "Whilst you decide what you want to do in this new world, I'll be asleep. Don't wake me up unless you're about to die." Naruto let out a slight yawn as he let sleep take him as well. "Naruto, wake up." Blue eyes fluttered open and, in an instant, gripped the hand that was trying to shake him awake before engaging in a maneuver that put the assailant in a chokehold. It all happened so quickly that Susan was unable to do anything about, she tapped his arms in alarms as she choked into his hold. "Naruto." The thing shouted. Naruto looked down to see Susan struggling under his grip, he immediately let her go looking almost scared that he almost killed her. I'm so sorry," he repeated as he let Susan go. Susan gasped slightly for air but appeared otherwise fine. She stood up carefully, giving an apologetic glance at Naruto. "It's alright," she said softly, still somewhat anxious about what had just transpired. "I was just going to tell you that breakfast was ready." Why? Why were these people being so nice to him? He could be a threat, heck, he almost killed one of them. The thing grimaced tightly. He knew a Soul Eater when he saw one. The signs were there, tight form, always on alert, and PTSD, Naruto had all of them. He was sure Susan sensed it too. Susan leaned down, "It's going to be okay, Naruto. You're not stuck there anymore." She placed a stack of clothes by his bedside, "Freshen up, then come and eat. I'm sure you're craving some real food." She and the thing left the room, leaving him in his thoughts. Naruto eventually went downstairs, dressed in a pair of clean clothes that Susan had provided him. Johnny Storm grinned, "So Sleeping Beauty is finally awake. You've been asleep for 2 days." Reed peered up from his book, he said, "It's a common side effect from dimensional travel." Naruto wondered why they weren't talking about what had just happened, he would have thought Johnny and Reed would outright attack him. A quick glance at Susan gave him all the answers he needed. "The language spell that strange cast on you is going to wear out soon," Reed informed Naruto. "We're going to have to get you up to speed." Naruto grinned, "That's no problem for me, I can learn it all by tonight." They looked at him as if he was insane, there weren't many people that were capable of learning an entire language in the span of a few hours, Reed being one of them. Naruto did a cross with his hands and in a plume of smoke, they were greeted to an exact clone of him. "I can make thousands of clones and after they die, I get all of their memories and experiences." "Fascinating." Reed murmured, "So you have some sort of empathetic and telepathic link to your clones. Do you feel pain when they die?" Naruto shook his head, Reed's eyes gained an odd gleam that made Naruto gulp, "Give me 24 clones, and I'll get you up to the same level as people your age." Johnny laughed, "You're so screwed dude, Reed's gonna put your clones through the ringer." Ben nodded, you're definitely going to regret telling Stretch that whiskers. Naruto shrugged, they had to be exaggerating. Besides, being taught by what Strange called this world's greatest mind was a privilege that he simply couldn't pass up. Susan added, meanwhile, Johnny can take you out to explore the city and hopefully buy some new clothes. I'll go with. Ben said, I don't trust you, not to mess with the kid Johnny. And do make sure that he's presentable. Susan glared at her brother, that means no orange. Both Naruto and Johnny said at the exact time, what's wrong with orange? Reed replied, nothing. Susan is just upset about the time Johnny took Franklin shopping and bought him all orange clothes. Susan simply huffed indignation as she headed out of the room, leaving the rest to chuckle at her behavior. Johnny nudged Naruto and whispered, if we move fast enough, we can ditch the big rock. Can he fly? Naruto said cheekily, Johnny simply grinned. By the time it was time for them to leave, Ben was greeted to speeding jets of fire streak through the air. He sighed, I should have known. Then again, at least, he got to relax without Johnny trying to hug the TV. Shopping was boring, he knew that already, but without the exciting prospect of looking and browsing over new weapons and shinobi tools, it seemed to be even more mind-numbing and drudging. It also seemed like Johnny Storm was a literal celebrity, people would flock to him every few minutes, asking for selfies on these tiny electrical devices called phones. It was almost afternoon when they exited the mall, Johnny said, so we'll drop these off back home and then we can go to the Knicks game. Knicks? Naruto questioned. Their sports team. Naruto was slightly excited, he wanted to see how well the people on this earth fought. You're gonna love basketball, it's where two teams face off and they have to try and get the ball into the hoop, whoever has the most points wins. Forget it. This planet was boring. Flame on. Johnny caught a blaze before he took off into the air, Naruto followed straight behind. The two of them flew straight through the city, turning through several different buildings as they made their way back to the Baxter building. Naruto immediately sensed a powerful wave of negative emotion, he turned around in time to dodge a powerful sonic wave. The wave hit Johnny square straight in the chest, sending hurtling down into the ground. Naruto dove straight down, landing effortlessly beside the groaning Human Torch, are you okay? He asked. Johnny nodded, it surprised me is all. He looked around the street but to no avail, it was as if his attacker wasn't there. Behind. Naruto shouted, they both dove out of the way in time as an even greater sonic blast slammed into the pavement. I'm back. A metallic voice echoed loudly. Johnny's eyes widened when he saw the unmistakable sonic cannon of Ulysses Claw. Wondering how I'm still alive, Torch. Claws made his way towards them, he flicked his sonic converter against the wall, amplifying the sound till it reached a screeching peak. Let's just say, I got an upgrade. And I'm here to get my revenge, Claw said, angrily. The Human Torch took off, flames flew straight at Claw who simply stood there and allowed it to burn him to no effect. Claw laughed, do you not understand? I am beyond human, I have become pure sound. Unkillable, untouchable, I am supreme. You're insane, Johnny said angrily, he increased the heat of his flame blast. Claw simply raised his sound converter and fired another sonic blast, Johnny managed to dodge it, but his equilibrium was knocked off balance as it ruptured his eardrum. Claw turned in amusement as the whisker-faced teenager threw several blades at his chest, only for them to phase through. Naruto groaned in annoyance, why do so many of you bastards have ghost-like powers? Naruto cast a sideways glance at Johnny who was struggling to keep himself standing as Claw pointed his sonic weapon at him, intent on finishing him off whilst he was weak. Naruto appeared in front of Claw, his kick blew apart his aim sending his arm upwards just before he fired his sonic beam. Naruto appeared impressed as the beam cut across the sky like a comet, he was sure that even he would struggle if he had hit by it. The Human Torch finally regained his balance, his flames burned brighter and hotter as he grew angrier. Naruto said, stop, Johnny. We can't win this by fighting him head-on. Johnny was curious to see what the young upstart had to say. Do you have a plan? He asked. No. Naruto admitted. Well, kind of, how long can you keep him distracted? As long as necessary. The flaming torch set out into the air, whistling loudly and drawing Claw's attention as he flew around in circles. Claw angrily began to fire dozens of his sonic waves that put several bus-sized holes into the neighboring buildings. Johnny shouted, Naruto, get a move on. He's going to bring down the whole street. Naruto's Rincharingan had picked up on interesting detail that Claw had to maintain physical form whilst he was firing his sonic blasts. Naruto rushed forwards, his fingers danced as he sped through several seals. Here goes nothing. Hyotenheimten Hyakasm. He slammed his hands into the ground and Claw was consumed by a huge piece of ice. The ice appeared incredibly dense and as tall as a miniature skyscraper. Johnny whistled, talk about overkill, you damn well froze the whole street. His flame body kept him warm from the absolute nipping temperature. Naruto, however, was watching the ice with increased concentration. It's not over yet. The purpose of the ice was to slow him down. He knew the claw would escape, but he needed him slower if he was going to defeat him. A loud screeching vibration shocked the earth beneath them, the ice cracked, and then there was a long pause that made both of them wonder if Claw had expended his energy. The mountain of ice and snow shattered like a piece of glass. Claw said victoriously, "Your ice wasn't cold enough to stop sound." An icy mist blocked his vision. He raised his weapon as he heard the brief shuffling of feet. Claw stomped on the ground and used the sound to try and echolocate their location in the mist. Behind him. The ice had slowed him down. He couldn't react in time as Naruto's palm slammed into his chest. Gakken. Claw felt a powerful pull from his body as his energy began to seep out of him and into Naruto. He screamed in veritable pain as his form began to flicker. I will not be defeated." Naruto watched in fascination as Claw simply dispersed, unable to hold his physical form any longer. The Human Torch asked anxiously, "Did you kill him?" Naruto shrugged, "He's made out of energy, I'm not sure he can be killed. He'll probably reform somewhere." The Biju were literally the same thing, they couldn't die because they were made up of chakra. He guessed Ulysses' claw was the same thing just with sound. As the mist cleared, Naruto quickly became privy to the number of people that had come to film the fight. Johnny gave the cameras his signature boyish smile. "You're a celebrity now, Naruto." "I'd rather not," Naruto muttered. "Well, it's too late. Everyone's gonna be talking about the new Phenom in town." "Great, just great." He could already hear them whispering about him, perhaps he should have bought a mask. Naruto didn't give them the time to take more shots as he blasted into the air, heading towards the Baxter building. Johnny gave the media a final salute and kiss before he flew off as well, quickly joining Naruto. He grinned, "Want a race? Think you can keep up with me?" Johnny was almost thrown to the ground by a sonic boom as Naruto sped across the sky. "Cocky little brat." The Human Torch was like a trailing ember to Naruto's golden light. He landed on the roof annoyed when he saw Naruto simply just leaning against the wall. "You sure took your time." Johnny raised his hand in surrender. Okay. You got me." They headed inside only to be greeted by a fuming Susan Storm. "I tell you to do one thing and what do? You decide to get a fight with Claw and practically destroy a street," she said to her brother. Johnny replied, "Calm down sis, it's not like we went out looking for a fight. Claw just came out of nowhere." Naruto nodded, confirming her story. Susan sighed, realizing that there really wasn't anything she could do. "Reed is downstairs, Naruto. You have a guest waiting for you." Naruto entered the living room, his eyes narrowed as he felt a familiar presence from a few days ago. "Mr. Uzumaki." A bald man in a wheelchair greeted him. He was flanked by a burly feral-looking man and an attractive dark-skinned woman who looked a lot like Mabui with her white hair. Naruto growled, "You're that guy who tried to enter my mind." "I apologize for that." The bald man said, "I meant no disrespect, but I had to be sure that you were indeed a mutant." "Mutant?" Naruto questioned. "Tell me, have you noticed anything odd happening to you lately?" Xavier nodded towards Logan and the feral man grunted in annoyance as 3 metal claws erupted from his hand. "I'm sure you have already figured my power set. Logan here has the ability to regenerate quickly and use adamantium quickly." He pointed towards the white-haired woman. "This is Aurora, she can control the weather." Naruto was mildly impressed. He had never met anybody who could do that. Kagaya had something similar, but all she was doing was warping her dimension. Naruto released a tiny amount of his chakra. Xavier and his guests immediately grew weary as they felt themselves getting weighed down by the energy's sheer density. "That is my chakra. Everyone on my planet has it." It was technically true, even civilians possess chakra, even if it was so minute they couldn't really do anything with it. Xavier was taken aback slightly that Naruto wasn't from this earth. Though to his credit, he recovered rather quickly. Cerebro has never been wrong, there have been cases of mutants from parallel Earths coming to ours. Reed clarified for his friend, "I scanned one of your clones just to be sure, it appears that you do indeed possess a variant of the mutant gene." "In your universe, were they any sort of powers that were hereditary family related?" Xavier asked. Naruto nodded, "There are called bloodline limits back home, certain clans had abilities that only they could use. It's not known how it happened. The Uchiha, Senju and Uzumaki all got their power from being direct descendants of the Rikado Sennin. He guessed the Hyuga as well since Kagaya had a Byakugan, but the other clans, he had no idea how the other clans developed bloodline limits. Though he wouldn't be surprised if all bloodlines did come from Kagaya, it explained why he could use elemental Kekai Genkai like Haku's Hyutin. Reed pondered on it for a while, "They're all linked to chakra, I don't think the X gene would manifest in such a way. There would be no selection pressure to create such a mutation in the first place." Charles agreed, "It is a rather unique situation, I must say." He turned to Naruto, "And you are sure you have never experienced anything besides using this chakra of yours?" Naruto nodded impatiently. He was getting bored with this conversation. Dororo intervened, seeing Naruto's irritated expression. The professor runs a school to train mutants in using their power and prepare them for the real world. We came here to see if you were interested in joining. Reed added, a lot of the students are around your age, it may be an opportunity to have some normalcy. Naruto, however, got the feeling that Xavier wasn't preparing them to live a normal life. By the sounds of it, it sounded more like the Shinobi Academy. What are you actually training them for? Naruto asked evenly. Charles sighed. He could tell that Naruto would not be swayed unless he told him the full truth. Humankind has been at odds with mutants since the beginning of time. They fear that they are going to be wiped out if we are allowed to grow. The Xavier Institute is a sanctuary where mutants can live, learn and develop their powers in peace. This was all very similar to what happened to his clan. In fear that Yuzurishi Agakure would become a major power in the elemental nations, it was destroyed by a coalition of Kiri and Kumo shinobi. You should go, brat. Kurama growled from his mind, it's better than simply sitting around all day. Besides, we both know you can't help not helping people in need. And by the sounds of it, these kids are in for a rude awakening when it all goes to hell. Very well, Professor. I accept your offer. Naruto agreed, if only out of intrigue and semi-boredom. Charles smiled, welcome to the X-Men, my boy. Who would have thought that using clones to mass info dump would hurt so much? I told you that you would end up regretting it. Johnny chuckled at Naruto's current predicament. Naruto winced in pain, he could barely move his head without getting a splitting headache, and Johnny's inability to shut his gob for a few seconds was not helping. I thought the Cyclops warned you about using your clones this way. Kyuubi growled loudly, though Naruto could tell that he was finding his suffering amusing. I thought they were bluffing. Naruto groaned, how was I supposed to know that he had developed a way to transfer information through neural networks? Reed had literally force-fed all of his clones information using some sort of machine, though he now knew a lot more about this world than he did before. This world was no different than his own. War, strife, poverty, it was all the same. Nothing had changed. And nothing ever will. The Kyuubi reminded him. Father was naive to believe in peace. Humans are too prideful to admit their flaws, too short-sighted to care about anything but themselves, too quick to draw arms against those who are different than them. Naruto snorted, sure, true peace may never be achieved, but things can be improved. His eyes hardened slightly. Rikado Jiji's vision was simply that, he believed in a world where people didn't use chakra to fight wars, but for the betterment of humanity. The Shinobi Alliance was a step in the right direction. He just hoped that people back home didn't regress back to the way things were. Charles asked, who were you speaking to? Naruto nursed his head as he peeked over at the bald telepath. Stop reading my thoughts, Naruto growled. Charles smiled genially, you mistake me when you are speaking to the entity in your body, you are projecting your thoughts out loud, similar to how we are speaking. I don't need to read your mind to hear them. The professor is the strongest telepath on Earth. Storm added, he has a hard time not hearing stray thoughts. Truthfully, Naruto didn't know much about mind reading. In general, the Yamanaka clan were gifted at mind-body techniques, but from what little he had seen from Xavier, he was hundreds of times stronger than they were. Xavier rolled towards him, if I may. Naruto nodded, briefly wondering what the man wanted. Xavier tapped Naruto's temples gently, and Naruto felt an instant relief wash over him as the headache simply faded out of existence. What? The Naruto grimaced as he felt the professor's mind meld with his own. A bombardment of disjointed memories entered the telepath's mind, and the man grimaced at how broken apart and fractured his mind was. He had seen a brief glimpse into Naruto's tragic past, how he had been forced to contain a powerful beast and to endure the hatred of his village. How he had been ripped from his home and into nightmares, sickening games. Xavier knew then and there that Naruto was what he needed. He was what the students needed. If they were to survive what was coming, the X-Men needed to become much stronger. What did you do? Naruto thought angrily. He could still feel the man's presence inside his head, filtering through his mind. Charles replied, I adjusted the flow of information into your brain, so it didn't overwhelm you. He peered over at the others, don't worry, I won't tell anybody what I saw. Naruto gave him a thankful smile. If letting Xavier, a tiny peek into his past, was what it cost to get rid of that blasted headache, so be it. Besides, he was going to have to end up revealing it at some point. It didn't really matter so much as when, but who in Xavier appeared to be a trusting individual. Xavier and Storm watched as Naruto unwrapped a small portion of the large scroll on his back, placing all of the clothes that he bought onto the center of the seal. He made a motion with his hand, and the clones disappeared in a puff of smoke. I'm ready to go. Naruto said, peeking up at the two mutants who appeared agape by his display. What? Dororo asked, how? It's just paper. Naruto explained, the paper is just a medium, the items are sent to alternative space until I call upon them. Aurora still didn't understand how such a thing was possible with just a bit of ink and paper, but Xavier, who was at least somewhat familiar with Naruto's world, simply nodded in understanding. She asked, "And this energy of yours allows you to accomplish such things?" Naruto nodded. Chakra is in its simplest form a combination of physical and spiritual energy. The energy can be used to perform different types of things like manipulating the elements, enhance your body, cast illusions, and of course create seals. Aurora muttered to herself, "What an unfair ability." Naruto chuckled somewhat. "You've clearly never met Franklin." He gestured for the boy who was busy playing PlayStation. Franklin appeared in front of them in an instant. "Franklin, do you mind showing Aurora here what your power is?" The boy smirked. He snapped his finger and in front of him materialized a large key-like blade. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the questionable weapon but watched as Franklin swung the keyblade down, allowing for a blade of light to arc toward Storm. Franklin said excitedly, "I got this from the game I was playing, pretty cool, right?" Naruto nodded. It was definitely an interesting weapon to say the least. Franklin eventually dispersed the blade and headed back to the sofa to continue playing his game. Xavier said, "He's gotten better." "You know him, Professor?" Storm asked. Charles nodded. "Cerebro detected Franklin when he was a baby, Reed and I had to work together to stop him from tearing reality apart." He shuddered just thinking about the many times he had been transfigured by baby Franklin. It was a very unpleasant experience, to say the least. Franklin possesses the very rare talent to warp reality. He is by far the strongest mutant on the planet. He peered towards Naruto, "Though I would say your energy readings would indicate that you are a close third." "Close?" Naruto wondered. "Yes, I have a student in my school whose energy readings were very similar to your own. I fear it's as a result of the entity within her." Storm frowned. It was the first time that she was hearing of this issue. Naruto hummed in interest. "How did you seal the entity?" "It can't be sealed. I simply created several mental blocks in her mind to stop her from accessing it." He said sadly, "I didn't want to, of course, but her power is so volatile that she would rip herself apart by using its power. I'll see if I can create a seal to either remove it from her or allow for an easier way to access its power without killing herself," Naruto said. Though he was excited to meet the woman who the professor had claimed was stronger than him. "Charles." Naruto and the professor turned to see a fuming Aurora. The wind causily rippled around her. "How could you keep this a secret?" The telepath said, "It wasn't something that you needed to worry about." Naruto understood that Charles had only told him because he believed that he could help him in his predicament. "If you're all done with the chit-chat," Logan growled as he got up from the table, "let's go." Ben said snidely, "You're just angry that you lost at poker." Logan popped his claws out and pointed them at the thing's neck. "Always the violent one, aren't you?" He stood up and the table flipped over, ready to brawl with Wolverine. Fizz. An invisible barrier erupted between them. "Can't you two go a few hours without fighting?" Susan asked. "DCH, you got saved this time, Grim." "Right back at you," the thing said cockily. Wolverine stalked out of the room whilst the thing busily celebrated winning $1,000 from his old-time buddy rival. Naruto wondered, is he always so grouchy? Aurora said, "Yes, it's kind of his entire personality." Naruto chuckled at her little jab to her teammate. Seemed like both of them was headstrong enough that they would be at their necks. Xavier said, "We should be on our way." He shook Reed's hand for his hospitality. "You know Franklin is welcome at the academy anytime." Susan glared at the professor as he rolled out the door with Strom. She turned to Naruto, who finishing up what little he had yet to pack. "Are you sure this is what you want, Naruto?" Susan was worried about his mental state after what happened in the morning. She did not think it was wise to send him into another battlefield. If he joined the Xavier Academy, he would be forever branded as a mutant and she had seen the horrors that such a label could cause. Then came to Naruto's rescue. "I'm sure Naruto can handle himself." Some familiarity won't hurt him. "Thanks, big guy," Naruto said. He gave Susan a grin. "Don't worry about me, I'll be fine. Just make sure to visit from time to time." She accepted. Reed said, "Oh, he'll be over every week for private tutoring." Naruto growled, "No way am I being subjected to that torture again." He grabbed his scroll and headed quickly out of the room. Reed shouted, "Don't forget. Every Monday at 5, if you don't I'll tell Charles to not give you any ramen." Naruto froze at the blatant attempt at blackmail. Damned clones didn't know when to shut their mouths. "Fine." He shouted back. He'd be damned if anything stopped him from having ramen. The Xavier Institute stood alone in the remote farmland surrounding Worcester. It was around 3 stories tall and had 2 main wings attached to the main building. Naruto noted how the institute didn't appear to look anything like a school, but rather a posh residency. "Clever strategy, old man. Nobody would suspect your home to be a school." Logan snorted, "I think you're giving Chuck too much credit, he just loves his mansion too much to change it." Naruto nodded as he admired the architecture. It was so much more different than the buildings were in his world, but it had an old world feeling that resonated with him. Xavier replied, I admit I had never thought of such a strategy, but it wouldn't do much use regardless. The kids study at a school in the town. Naruto raised an eyebrow. He questioned the point of calling something a school if you never taught the students to begin with. The plane halted in the air as it hovered over the plain field of the mansion. The grass opened up into two, revealing a sort of underground hangar. Naruto exited the jet once they had landed. He found himself in an enclosed metal hangar with several different types of jets and planes. Welcome back, Professor. A blue furry beast of a man jumped from one of the planes and landed in front of them. I trust your journey was most eventful. The beast peered over towards him. Naruto felt on edge as its eyes scoured all over his body. Xavier replied, yes Hank, Naruto here was the reason for Cerebro's weird behavior. Hank turned to see Naruto was busy pounding his fist against the hull of the X-Jet, intrigued as to how it functioned. Let's just say he's not from around here. Any idea about his mutant power? Hank asked. Xavier smirked, you'll have to see for yourself. He had no doubt that no mutant in this house could feasibly defeat Naruto. Perhaps Jean or Rogue, but they were too inexperienced with their power. Brat, stop damaging the jet, Logan growled as he saw Naruto had managed to put a dent in the hull of the X-Jet. Naruto frowned at how weak the metal was. If just one tap could practically dent the metal, he figured he could wreck the whole thing with just a punch. He closed his eyes and channeled his chakra. Xavier's eyes widened in slight shock as the metal bent back to how it was. Naruto gave Logan an inquisitive look, how much metal are you made of? He had seen the man's metal claws, but it felt like his whole body was made up of metal. Logan's claws immediately popped out in anger. He asked, do you think that your claws would hurt me? Care to find out, bub, Logan growled. Naruto teased, stress isn't good for your age, old man. I think you're already beginning to wrinkle. At that moment Logan wanted nothing more than to skewer the brat. He swiped at Naruto, but found his body frozen mid-thrust. Now is that any way to welcome a guest? Naruto, stop annoying Logan. Charles said. Naruto shrugged and stopped his jutsu, allowing Logan to fall to the ground. Logan, please get all of the students in danger room. Logan asked, for what? I want to test their progress, Charles said. They will face Naruto. Naruto looked at the professor in surprise. He had no idea that the man was planning on such a drastic test. Not that I don't mind a good fight, but why? Naruto asked. I was told you were an experienced fighter, perhaps even greater than Logan. The students may learn a thing or two from facing you. Charles answered. He looked over at Logan, who seemed affronted that his role was being usurped. To make things fair, Logan and Aurora will be joining them. Naruto grinned slightly, very well. He cranked his neck, but only if I can take charge on the objectives. What do you have in mind? All I'll need are 2 bells. Naruto explained his idea, which he totally did not steal from Kakashi-sensei. Naruto walked throughout the school alongside the professor, who was acting as his tour guide. He had seen many of the facilities, including his room, which he had to admit was incredibly spacious. It was definitely more luxurious than his apartment back home. During his time exploring, Naruto realized just how empty the institute was. There were maybe a dozen or so mutants in total here, many of them were much younger than he was. And by the looks of it, they were much more interested in trying to size him up than greeting him. Charles said, the only place that is left is the danger room, it's where we train our students. They delved deeper underground. Naruto wondered just how much of the school was built underground. It sure did seem like the majority of it was. Xavier came to a stop in front of a pair of teenagers. He smiled. Scott, Jean, I like you to meet Naruto. Naruto peeked at the two of them with slight interest. Considering the professor's reaction, he assumed that these two were his most prized students. Jean's eyes twinkled as she greeted him. Nice to meet you, Naruto. She instinctively sent a gentle probe into his mind, but she was immediately overwhelmed by a powerful mental barrier. Can't say the same, Naruto replied. Jean, what have I told you about entering people's minds without their permission? Sorry, Professor. She gave Naruto an apologetic look, which he accepted somewhat begrudgingly. Jean couldn't help but stare at the teen in front of him. He seemed very tranquil, almost sage-like. He had a very unique appearance, to say the least. She wondered if he had cat-like power, considering those whisker marks on his cheeks. She was excited to see what he was capable of. Scott said, everybody is in the danger room as you asked, Professor. He gave Jean a small look and she nodded, but today is a Sunday, it's supposed to be our day off. Charles smiled, I'll give you the whole week off if you manage to finish today's training sequence. Jean and Scott looked surprised at the offer. The professor hardly ever offered them many days off from training. Scott, unlike Jean, who was pretty leaping at the opportunity, was suspicious as to what this training sequence entailed for the professor to be so confident. He asked, and what is the training sequence? The professor merely smiled, preferring to keep the objective a secret. He headed up the elevator towards the control room of the danger room, leaving Naruto to awkwardly stand beside Jean and Scott. Scott snorted as he gave Naruto a hard glare before he walked into the danger room. Jean smiled genially, "Come on, I'll show you the changing rooms." From his first step into the danger room, Naruto immediately wondered why it warranted such a name. It certainly did not feel like he was in any danger. The dome-shaped room was composed entirely of metal and appeared incredibly bare. In fact, the only thing in the room was a large metallic ball that hung onto the ceiling. "Welcome to the danger room, Naruto." Charles's voice echoed through several microphones sporadically spread around the room. He introduced Naruto to the students opposite from him. In addition to Scott and Jean, Naruto met Kitty, a petite brunette who had a penchant for saying like, Kurt who looked like a blue-furred devil and spoke in a weird foreign accent, and Aurora's vocal nephew Evan. Finally, there was Rogue who had hidden in the back, she didn't at all seem interested in anything. Kitty asked, "Why do we have to fight him, can't he like just go through a simulation?" Charles echoed, "This is as much a test for Naruto as it is for you." He pressed a button, and a metal tentacle rushed towards Naruto. The boy's reaction was to simply grab it and rip straight from the ground. "Besides, my machines won't do much against him, and I'd rather not cause such needless damage." They did cost a lot, and contrary to popular opinion, Charles wasn't made out of money. Rogue shrugged, "Let's just get this over with." No matter how strong this new mutant was, there was no way he could beat all of them, especially with Wolverine and Storm on their team. Evan looked at Naruto with slight suspicion, the teen looked increasingly familiar to him like he had seen him somewhere. His eyes widened in shock, he pointed at Naruto and looked over at his friends, "He's that guy on the news that was fighting with the Human Torch." "Oh, we are so dead." "Calm down, Evan," Aurora said to her nephew. "There is no use getting scared before a fight." "Aurora is correct." Charles echoed, "The test is rather simple, Naruto. If you will." Naruto raised a pair of two small jingling bells that were tied to his pants, "That is your objective, to pass the test. All you have to do is take the bells from Naruto." Kurt hopped around eagerly, "Easy." He disappeared with a small bamf appearing all of a sudden underneath Naruto, hand outstretched as he reached for the bells. Naruto turned towards Nightcrawler. He grabbed his hand with a teasing grin, "I didn't say start." Nightcrawler was hurled straight back towards the group, he landed straight onto Wolverine. Logan shoved Kurt off of him and launched himself towards Naruto. Claws outstretched and eyes feral with rage, Naruto dodged several off Wolverine's clawed swipes. The man angrily growled at how comfortably Naruto was parrying and countering his attacks. Flume. Naruto jumped out of the way as a beam of red energy zoomed towards him. Logan looked up in slight surprise before he was hit straight in the chest by one of Scott's ocular blasts. Naruto appeared as a flicker beside Scott, "You have really bad aim." Cyclops immediately turned and fired another beam towards him. Naruto simply made a motion with his hand, and Logan was struck by another one of Scott's blasts, sending him spiraling into the wall once more. "Missed again." Naruto teased as he appeared where Logan previously was. Scott growled and fired several more energy beams towards Naruto, who expertly danced between them like they posed no threat to him. "Really, I'm beginning to think that you might need stronger glasses," Naruto said as he appeared above him. Scott's visor glistened as he prepared to fire another beam, but Naruto was much faster than he was. Dynamic entry. The wind was knocked straight out of him as Naruto's flying kick landed straight into his diaphragm. Scott's body crunched harshly against the wall, the mutant team groaned in intense pain, that kick had to have cracked a rib or two. "Atya." Naruto felt two hands suddenly grab his feet and drag them under. Kitty's face slowly emerged from the ground as she rooted him into the ground. "Jean now." He stared amusedly as Jean outstretched her hand, he felt a powerful pull from his midsection, and the bells hurled straight towards Jean. Kitty smirked, "We win." Whilst Naruto had been busy dealing with Logan and Scott, she and the other had formulated a foolproof way to obtain the bells without having to engage in direct combat, which they would quite clearly lose. Kitty felt a slight shift in Naruto's aura, immense amounts of chakra poured out of him like a broken dam before it vanished altogether. He flexed. Boom. Kitty had to turn herself intangible as Naruto in a show of pure strength and speed, blew apart the metal floor and dashed towards the hurling bells. Jean shouted, "Kurt, get the bells now." Naruto frowned as Kurt teleported near the bells, the blue devil was too quick for him to use a substitution jutsu. Yes, he had no choice. Jean watched as Naruto's electric blue eyes turned sinister red, she heard him mutter something, and like before, Kurt's body was swapped with Naruto. He grabbed the bells and spun himself in midair, he pushed his palms outward, and a torrent of lightning struck her. Jean let out a silent scream, her body crumbled unconscious into the ground. "Jean." Kurt shouted as he watched her fall, he teleported besides Naruto, intent on knocking him out. Naruto grabbed Kurt's kick, he gazed into the mutant's eyes. "Sleep." Kurt felt his mind cloud and an irresistible fatigue overcome him. Naruto gently lowered the snoring mutant onto the ground. He grinned as he turned towards the remaining 5. Who's next? Evan rushed towards him, bones sprouted out of his body, and he fired them straight at Naruto. The bones were simply a distraction for Logan to attack him from behind. He slammed his hands together and a burst of ice erupted around him, encasing them both in a glacier. All that remained were Kitty, Rogue and Storm. Naruto suddenly jumped to his side as Kitty tried to grab from under once more. The same trick wouldn't work me on again. Though it was beginning to annoy him that he could not sense her in her intangible form. A beam of red energy erupted from underneath the ground and struck him straight in the chest. It wasn't for ya, Rogue said in her silky southern accent as she and Kitty arose from the ground like ghosts. Rogue raised her hand, Naruto immediately felt himself being flung towards her. I'll finish this quickly. She removed her glove, this will only hurt for a second. This girl, Naruto thought. She had the same power as Scott and Jean, no, she was using their power, he could practically feel their life force melding into her own. He couldn't allow himself to be touched, he allowed Rogue to drag him towards her using her telekinesis until he was mere inches away from her skin. Shinra Tensei. A small yet powerful gravitational burst erupted from Naruto, Kitty and Rogue were launched into opposing ends of the room, knocked unconscious by the sheer force of his attack. Naruto looked up at the floating storm, it's just me and you now, Aurora. The woman sent several small lightning bolts towards him, Naruto noted just how lackluster her efforts were. I thought you could control the weather. Naruto inquired as he appeared suddenly behind Aurora. She swiped her hand and a gust of air blew towards him, he vanished once more. He appeared in front of her, Storm felt Naruto grab her by the hems of her uniform and thrown straight towards the ground. She managed to save herself by using air to cushion her fall. But all I'm seeing is a woman who is afraid of using her power. The air turned icy all of a sudden, Storm shoved her hand towards Naruto, directing the icy storm towards him. Naruto simply ran through a series of hand seals, Kaiten. Nkakik no Jutsu. He breathed in and expelled a ball of fire that was almost half the room in size. The ice met fire, the room exploded into 1,000 torrents of steam. Charles, shouldn't we stop the fight now? Beast asked worriedly, both Storm and Naruto possessed powers that were too strong to contain in the danger room. He was also worried that their fight would lead to the other students getting hurt. The professor didn't choose to reply as he was more invested in watching Naruto fight his strongest student. The heavy steam was beginning to settle down, revealing an uninjured Naruto and Storm. He noticed the steam around Naruto begin to boil and froth until it reached a point where it exploded and to his surprise, he sent a pillar of pressurized hot gas straight at Storm, who countered by raising an icy wall. Beast looked in wonder as Naruto and Storm danced in a hail of the elements, each of them using similar elements to counter the other. The boy had thus far shown many different abilities. He listed them all in his mind, energy manipulation, spatial manipulation, elemental control, and he appeared to have superhuman strength, speed and agility. And he doubted that Naruto was even fighting with half of his power. Charles sighed, looks like it's over. It was a landslide victory for Naruto, the boy wasn't even trying at this point and had simply extended his duel with Storm just for his own excitement. Storm panted, she could barely stand on her feet after blocking another blast of Naruto's powerful wind and fire combination. It was easy enough to generate gusts of wind or lightning indoors, but it took much more energy to create large weather patterns without an actual environment to do it in. To top it off, the boy in front of her didn't look at all fazed by any of her attacks. The nonchalant air around him was beginning to get on her nerves, it was almost as though he didn't perceive to be a threat. Naruto cracked his knuckles and vanished in a burst of pure speed appearing above her. She raised her forearm to stop Naruto's spinning downward kick, she watched as he casually changed the trajectory of his body so that he landed on the ground. Aurora felt her body fall as her legs were swept right from under her. I win, Naruto said confidently. Slink. She smirked, I wouldn't say that. Naruto felt Wolverine's claws tapping his back. Did you really think you could stop me with just a block of ice? Logan growled angrily. Naruto shook his head amusedly, I'm surprised that you managed to break free. Though a lot of the work had been done by the heat from his fire jutsu. Logan grew more suspicious as the boy didn't seem to give any inclination that he was surprised by his presence. But you're not exactly the hardest to sense, Logan-san. Logan spun around as heard Naruto's voice echo from behind him. Fuin. His body suddenly seized up as he fell together ground, paralyzed from the power of Naruto's Fuinjutsu. His eyes widened slightly as he saw two Naruto standing over him, both of them grinning victoriously. Aurora asked, how is such a thing possible? A shinobi never gives away his secrets. Logan's eyes widened. He had recognized that Naruto was a very skilled fighter, but to call himself a shinobi, he couldn't sense a single bad bone in the boy's body. It was almost paradoxical how someone who appeared so jovial to the point of absurdity was an assassin. Naruto noted the disappointment and resignation in Ororo's voice and said softly, "Don't be so hard on yourself, this wasn't exactly a fair fight." To begin with, Ororo gave him a hard look, but Naruto quickly assuaged her anger, "And by that I mean you were focusing too much on controlling your power than you were at me." She sighed, "It's a byproduct of my ability, the more strength I use, the more I alter the climate around me." Naruto hummed to himself, "Then you just need to fine-tuning your control. He leant down and whispered in her ear, "Tell you what, since you can't train at full power without causing damage to the ecosystem, I'll give you access to one of my pocket dimensions to train." She questioned, "And what would you like in return?" Naruto shrugged, "Nothing really, I'm hoping that you get strong enough that you can become a good training partner. I've kind of grown bored of fighting my clones every day." Ororo twitched in annoyance at his reasoning. Naruto was definitely unhinged in more than one way. Charles's voice rang through the microphone, "Well done, Naruto. You have passed with flying colors. If you will, Hank wants to conduct some medical tests on you." Naruto gave the professor a mock salute as he headed towards the entrance to meet Beast. He sent his clone to heal all of the students, many of whom were slowly waking up. MMMHMMM. Logan could barely stifle out a murmured complaint about his current predicament. Naruto shouted, "Don't worry, it'll fade in an hour or so." "You all failed." Xavier rolled into the room with a frown. Scott muttered, "No shit, they were thoroughly beaten. It was almost embarrassing to call themselves the protectors of mutant kind if they were taken out so easily by a teenager." "I told you we would lose." Evan shrugged carelessly. Kitty nodded, "Like what were you expecting would happen, Professor? You weren't supposed to beat me." Naruto's clone appeared suddenly in front of them with a fully healed Jean and Rogue. "It was a test to see how well you all work together." Kurt asked, "Then V should pass, no?" He pointed towards Jean and Kitty. "V came the closest to taking the bells from you." He was still upset that Naruto had managed to beat him at his own game. Naruto shook his head, "Your attacks were too disjointed, you attacked less as a team and more as individuals. Sure, you work together but only when necessary." He looked at Scott evenly, "Don't even get me started on how you decided to use your power. Did you really think that it was a good plan to just spray and pray?" Scott gritted his teeth angrily, "Who are you to tell me?" Naruto's arm shot forward and grabbed Scott by the neck, the boy chalked under his grip. Naruto looked over at all the stunned students. "What if I was your real enemy, what would you all do then?" He gripped tighter, he peered down at Scott who was struggling against his arm. "The second one of you is captured, the enemy gains the upper hand." Naruto pointed at Kitty, "I could do this." Kitty killed Jean right now, her Scott eyes. Kitty's eyes widened. Her body shut down as she stared at how Scott was whimpering under Naruto's crushing grip. Xavier said firmly, "Naruto, that's enough." Naruto let Scott go, the boy fell to the ground wheezing pain. He looked at the group and said, "The world is changing, people are becoming more and more aware of mutant kind. We must all prepare, not just to protect other mutants, but to protect ourselves from those who wish to cause us harm." "Things would be different this time," Xavier promised to himself. "Why is your fur blue? Anybody ever tell you that you look like a cross between a cat and a monkey? I bet all that fur gets in the way when you arg." Beast pricked his needle harshly into Naruto's wrist in pure frustration as he tried to draw some blood out from the unruly boy. He wondered which of the gods he had upset to have to deal with Naruto's insatiable curiosity for his affliction and inability to not sit still for a single minute. "This is so boring," Naruto exclaimed. His eyes flickered over to the machine that Beast had placed his blood sample in. "I'm in perfectly good health, I don't know why I need a physical." "Indeed, you are, Naruto," Beast replied. He focused on the results of Naruto's genomic sequencing and full body scans. "Fascinating, I can't say I've ever seen a body quite like yours." Naruto deadpanned, "I'm not from around here. But you are still human. There have been occasions that mutants from different universes have been detected by Cerebro." Beast's screen changed to one depicting the movement of Naruto's cells. He ran them through his biosim program to see how they responded to stress. So that's your mutation. What is it?" Naruto couldn't comprehend what was happening on Beast's computer screen, it just looked like circular blobs elongating and sliding around all over the place. He noticed a glowing yellow circle brighten and encapsulate around the blob each time it was attacked by the program. Beast said, "I had originally thought that your mutation was directly related to this energy of yours. It's not uncommon for an X gene to be directly affected by one's environment or heritage. However, it would appear that in your case, your mutation seems to be what is enhancing your chakra." He pressed a few buttons and a body scan appeared on the screen. Naruto watched in slight fascination as he saw streams of energy flowing into his body. "See this?" Beast pointed to the computer screen. "I believe your ability to passively absorb ambient energy and convert it to chakra was a result of your time in the dream dimension. Similarly, I found several indications that if continual stress is applied to your cells, they will undergo a process of extreme adaptation." "Huh?" Naruto had no idea what this guy was talking about, seriously, Mizuki was better at explaining things than this guy. Beast sighed, imagine for a moment that someone poisoned you, your body will feel the effects of the poison for a short while before you become completely immune to it. Naruto frowned, but I've always had that ability. Kurama certainly made it hard for anything to kill him, there were occasions where he wouldn't even heal, because the blasted fox didn't want to help. I heard that, Naruto. Kurama growled from the depths of his mind, but the furry one is right, you have always possessed an overactive regenerative factor, I just enhanced it. Some would even go as far as to compare you Uzumaki are like cockroaches. Now that was a low blow, but he supposed that there was some element of truth in his words. Naruto. Are you there? Hank asked, wondering if he had truly bored him to sleep. Naruto snapped out of his stupor, he had been so focused on his thoughts that he had completely neglected the man in front of him. Beast chuckled, good, I thought I lost you for a moment. He waited a moment to make sure Naruto wasn't going to zone out before speaking, as I was saying, whilst your mutation is not as showy as many of the other mutants here, it certainly is a powerful one. Beast smirked when he noticed that he had captured Naruto's full attention, so to speak, your mutation is the perfect fit for your powers. It's quite astounding really, your reactive adaptation works in tow with your chakra, making you faster and stronger each time you use your chakra to enhance your body. It certainly did explain why he was so fast and strong without calling upon his chakra, he still was somewhat unsure what the full capabilities of this so-called mutation were, but that would come to light in due time. He asked, is that all? Hank nodded, yes there is little else I can do with what little genetic material I have acquired from you. Naruto gave him an appreciative thumbs up as he headed out of the lab, Hank quickly said, I'd advise you to keep your mutation under wraps for now. Why? Naruto questioned. X genes that can continually adapt are incredibly rare and are very useful to certain unsavory individuals. Beast replied, possessing a mutation like yours might be the key to developing multiple powers. Naruto sighed at the prospect of having to deal with another Orochimaru, he could imagine just how annoying it would be fighting someone who had all of the X-Men's powers, especially Jean and Xavier's psychokinesis. The two of them agreed to delete all information about his powers and genetic profile. Naruto headed to his room for some needed rest, his mind was still somewhat numb from all that information that he had received from his clones. Naruto winced as a series of new memories suddenly popped into his head, he pinched his nose in annoyance, for God's sake, can't they go a minute without doing something stupid? He was already going to have a hard time connecting with the students as it were, and he doubted that they would be keen on having him around after his clone threatened one of their own. It would do them good to learn that lesson before it is too late, Kurama said. Naruto agreed, but he also realized that the students did not come from a background similar to his own. The majority of mutants lived peacefully as civilians until they manifested their powers, and even then, it was certainly easy enough to just continue living as they were. Naruto let a tired yawn as he plopped himself onto his bed, there was little point pondering about all of this, now he would just have to deal with it in the morning. Morning came and with it arrived the inescapably loud stampede of students rushing to get ready for school. Naruto rubbed his eyes tiredly as he found himself abruptly woken up by all of the commotion. Naruto threw open his bedroom door angrily, he would have words with the bastards who had interrupted his beauty sleep. If I hear one more word, he stopped himself from speaking when he came face to face with Aurora. Aurora blushed embarrassedly as she stood mere inches away from a practically naked Naruto who was just wearing boxers. She could barely stop her eyes from trailing down his musculature, surprised by just how lean and tight his body was. She shook herself from her trance and peered at him with annoyance, where do you think you are going dressed like that? A gust of air blew Naruto back into his room, get dressed and come down for breakfast. Naruto landed awkwardly against his bed from as Aurora slammed the door in his face, he chuckled at Aurora's reaction and wondered why he always seemed to attract women who had somewhat violent tendencies. Regardless, if she thought he wasn't going to get her back for that, she was in for a rude awakening, but before any of that, he had to meditate once more. Naruto realized early on that mastery of the Rinnegan was sorely dependent on one's control of oneself, or rather there was a final path that both Nagato and Madara had yet to learn. The inner path, the path of enlightenment was said to be the pinnacle of the Rinnegan's power, the ability to control creation itself. Naruto had yet to even find what this path was, he could feel each time he meditated, but it was remained out of his grasp. Kurama muttered, you're just as annoying as he was, meditate this, meditate that. Shush, Kurama. I need to concentrate. A pure white aura blanketed over him, he could feel the world around him with ever-increasing clarity. The earth's tumultuous rage, the emotions of those in the mansion and beyond. This was different than before, in the dream dimension all he could really feel was himself, but here it was as if he had tapped into the world around him. Kurama watched from the depths of Naruto's mind, he smiled proudly, you were right, he truly is the one. He had always known that his partner would become the one to carry the mantle of his father. No, Kurama truly believed that Naruto would transcend him. The Biju had little time to ponder as he felt something dark emanate around his host's body. He growled and slammed his hands together in a show of true strength. Snap out of it, Naruto. Kurama's chakra erupted out and grabbed onto the darkness. Naruto's eyes slowly opened, dazed and confused as to what had just happened. A dark cloud danced in front of him, he couldn't see it so to speak, but he could sense it with his senjutsu. The cloud frizzled out as soon as it realized that it had been detected. What was that? Kurama asked. Naruto frowned, I don't know. But he had a feeling that it was linked to his sage mode. When he had taped into nature, it no longer felt warm as it did back home, instead it felt cold and empty. Whatever that cloud was, it was trying to corrupt him like it more than likely did to any other nature user. He would get answers, but right now he had more important matters to handle, namely feeding his growling stomach. Naruto arrived at the dining room in a flash, surprised that nobody was there besides Aurora, Logan and Charles. Where are the others? Aurora replied, they're already making their way to school. Naruto let out a sigh of relief, he didn't really feel like having to deal with all the negative emotions that he had sensed before. Charles said, come sit, Naruto. The bald telepath folded his newspaper as he drank some more of his tea. Hank told me about your mutation. Regeneration and energy manipulation, it is an intriguing combination, to say the least. Naruto shrugged, I don't know the half of anything to do with all this mutation stuff. Logan snorted in agreement at how boring all of the scientific talk was, though it was to be expected when you lived with not one but two world-renowned geniuses. But I'm sure it's not uncommon to find people with two differing mutations. Charles hummed in contemplation, Hank also has a secondary mutation, though not as extreme as yours. Naruto let out a mental sigh of relief as the telepath decided not to probe further into his deception. Perhaps we will encounter more mutants with such abilities in due time. Naruto asked, you mentioned something about danger last night. Is there anybody I should be worried about? Logan grunted, well there's Magneto and his group of lackeys, they call themselves the Brotherhood of Mutants. I'd say the only one who's a threat to you is Magneto himself. Who is Magneto? Charles answered, an old friend of mine, he and I parted as a result of our differing stances on humanity. He believes that the only way for peace is through fear and intimidation. He's a very powerful mutant that has the ability of magnetism. Naruto thought, just like Danzo, huh? Let's seek him out, I want to stretch my legs out a little, Kurama replied. The fox was getting somewhat antsy with Naruto's lack of using him. Naruto snorted, I'd rather not alert everyone that I have a demon fox inside me. He was sure that some entities were more than likely seeking him out. If Xavier could find him, it was only a matter of time before some other organization came knocking on this door. He would only use Kurama as a deterrent. I'm not giving you any of my chakra. Kurama huffed in annoyance. Love you too. Naruto chuckled as he cut off the connection. He turned to the professor who gave him a knowing look, if you need someone to deal with him, I'm willing. Logan growled, gonna kill him are ya, bub? Like you would? He questioned. Logan froze at Naruto's assertion, your fighting style is made to either maim or kill. You got me there kid. Logan stood up abruptly, I'm going into the city, I'll be back later. He told Charles as he slinked out of the room, muttering something about having to deal with Sabretooth again. Aurora sighed, he always leaves to avoid doing any work around here. Sometimes I wonder if he's just freeloading. She took a bite out of her apple and stared at Naruto with a heavy expression, of course that means you'll have to substitute for him. Poof. Aurora's eyes widened as she watched 100 or so clones appear out of the heavy smoke. Naruto waved his hands lazily, go clean. You heard the boss. One of the clones shouted, they all filed out of the room in a chaotic manner, crashing and bumping things over. Naruto facepalmed in exasperation at his clone's antics. You can make that many? Aurora asked, still surprised, she had seen him create one yesterday, but to think that he could create a veritable army, it made her feel somewhat inadequate. Naruto gave her a cheeky smile, you haven't scratched the surface of what I can do, princess. Call me that again. She dared. A cold breeze whipped around her in a menacing fashion, the table around her slowly began to freeze from the temperature. Lightning crackled in the sky, and the skies grayed from Storm's slight anger. So that's her true power. Naruto thought as he felt the sudden shift in the atmosphere. He had originally believed that she simply controlled the individual elements that encompassed weather, but it was becoming increasingly more clear that Storm possessed no such ability. Instead, she simply changed meteorological events to her whims or rather her temper. Aurora, Charles warned. She let her powers dissipate as she simply huffed and exited the room. Naruto looked at the professor and wondered what he had done to trigger her to such an extent. I wouldn't worry about it, Aurora has a bad history being called such things. Her powers made her somewhat of a godlike figure back home. Charles explained. Naruto simply nodded and returned his concentration back to his food, which was thankfully not frozen. Naruto and Xavier sat in silence as they finished their respective breakfast. Naruto enjoyed eating the fluffy pancakes, whilst he inscribed a few sealing arrays on a throwaway piece of paper. The design of any singular seal required intensive testing and an even more exhaustive process of trial and error. It was the reason why most shinobi never truly bothered with learning the art. Unlike the other shinobi art, mastering Fuinjutsu in its entirety was a lifelong endeavor, and even then, one would usually only be able to master certain subsets. The only exception was the Uzumaki, who had over generations cultivated a gargantuan library of knowledge about Fuinjutsu, which added to their prodigious talent, made it all the easier for them to learn and expound on certain topics. Sadly, Naruto had to self-teach him everything. It was painful and very dangerous. He remembered at some point almost losing his limbs as a result of trying to create a warp seal that was similar to Kamui. He grinned triumphantly as he looked at the completed array. Perfect. He thought. The professor asked, "What are you working on?" "It's a seal for Rogue," Naruto explained. Charles looked at him quizzically, wondering why Rogue would need a seal. "From what I have gathered, Rogue's powers are passively active. She absorbs whatever she touches." The professor nodded, curious to see what Naruto had designed. "This is a limiter seal. It will cover her skin with an invisible barrier so that she can touch people without hurting them." "And what about when she needs to use her powers?" "All she needs a code word. The seal will recognize it and will deactivate itself," Naruto said triumphantly. "Beast and I were getting worried that there was no way to circumvent her powers. Your seal is a great relief. I will send her to you as soon as she returns back home," Charles said. He pressed a chair on his wheelchair and began to drive off to his study. "In the meantime, I advise that you spend the rest of the day devising a lesson plan for your danger room session with the students." Naruto looked at the messy table and realized that both Aurora and Xavier had sneakily left him to do all the dishes. He sighed in annoyance as he broadcasted his thoughts. "I expect to be paid for this, old man." Xavier chuckled in his head. "I'll pay you when I see you doing work." Naruto already knew that the professor was the type to pay with rewards instead of with actual money. Little did he know that Naruto was an expert in matters of personal finance, and he would have compensation for having to do such menial labor. Naruto had spent the rest of the morning and early afternoon cleaning and preparing for his danger room lesson with Aurora's assistance. The technology in the room was incredibly useful and several orders of magnitude more complicated than anything that was in Konoha, but it was surprisingly easy to pick up. The room could literally create lifelike simulations of any scenario and environment so long as it was given the necessary constraints. "I think we should split them into different teams," Naruto said as he watched a recording of their fight from last night. Aurora disagreed. "If we do that, then they will never learn to work together." "I'm not saying we need to split them up, some of them require very different methods of training." He studied the list of mutants in front of him. Each mutant's powers were comprehensively detailed alongside videos of their runs in the danger room. He expanded a simulation run that the Logan had done with Kitty, Evan and Cyclops. Aurora and Naruto watched as the students all failed to complete Logan's simulation due to their bad hand-to-hand combat ability. "Do you see what I mean?" Aurora nodded. It wasn't easy to spot, but analyzing their habits made it all the more clear. They are all fighting the same way. They need to learn a fighting style that is complementary to their abilities, otherwise they aren't going to improve, Naruto concluded. He watched as Aurora swiped her hand, moving the holographic list away and conjuring some sort of timetable. She proposed, "Perhaps instead of splitting them up, we can each take an individual class. Logan will teach hand-to-hand combat whilst you and I focus on them learning to control their powers." Naruto agreed. They didn't have many students at the moment, and splitting them at the moment might lead to even more hostility. There was a brief rap on the door. Both Aurora and Naruto turned to see Rogue entering the room. "The professor said to meet you here," she said annoyedly. He guessed that she was still angry about what his clone did last night. "Aurora, if you please," Naruto asked. Aurora nodded, realizing that this was a private matter between the two of them. She gave Rogue a pointed look as she left. The girl simply huffed whilst she leant against the metal wall, coolly gazing at Naruto. "What do you want?" "I have things to do." Naruto teased. "You have something more important than getting your touch back." Rogue's eyes widened at what Naruto had just said. Her lips quivered slightly at the possibility that she could once more feel human contact without hurting anybody. "You can really do that?" she asked hopefully. "You can take away my powers?" Naruto shook his head. "I can't remove your powers, so to speak." Her expression became somewhat downtrodden. "But I can do the next best thing. I can stop your powers from activating when they touch you." "How?" He popped out a scroll from his pocket. Rogue watched as he unfurled it, revealing what appeared to be a complicated array surrounded with scribbles in a language she couldn't comprehend. Since your powers function through touch, I can create an intangible barrier around your skin that will protect others from your powers at least until you can master them, that is of course if you wanted. Rogue nodded rapidly and without any thought, she would do anything to get rid of these powers. Can you do it now? She asked. Naruto gazed firmly at Rogue, don't become overly dependent on my seal, you still need to work on learning to control your powers. He knew what Rogue was feeling, he had been intimately familiar with it, that crushing feeling with being burdened with a power that felt more like a curse than a blessing. But had it not been for that power, Naruto doubted that he would have survived this long, seeing that she understood he began his preparations for the ritual. He pointed to the middle of the room, please sit and roll up your sleeves. Rogue did as she was told, watching curiously as Naruto channeled his chakra, the writing on the scroll glowed in ethereal blue, he laid the scroll onto her arms and muttered, transcription seal. Release. The ink rose from the page and spread across her skin as if it were alive, the seal transcribed itself onto her until her entire body was covered in ink. She couldn't see anything. Her vision was covered by darkness, and she felt as if she was on fire. Naruto asked, Rogue, can you hear me? Ah, I can hear you. She said breathlessly. I need you to think of an activation word, it will allow you to transition between activating and deactivation your powers. She thought of the one thing that mattered to her at the moment, she felt her body lightened and the ink settled under her skin until it was no longer visible. Done. Was that all? She asked, besides the initial discomfort during the ritual she didn't feel any different than before. No loss of sensations, heck she felt slightly more sensitive to cold air than before. Naruto nodded, you can touch over people now here. His hand hovered over her own, Rogue reluctantly did as he wanted. She reached out and gently grasped his hand, her eyes widened when she no longer felt the powerful pull of her powers. Tears welled in her eyes, and Naruto was suddenly felt enveloped in a powerful hug. Aurora peeked through the door with a smile as she watched as the two embraced, he had done what nobody else could have done, and for that, she was truly thankful. Why is Teach meditating? Evan asked as he entered the danger room. I hope this isn't one of those find your inner focus lessons. Scott snorted, he's obviously not in the right state of mind. He was tempted to fire one of his optic beams at Naruto, but realized that the bastard would probably sense it coming regardless. Rogue rolled her eyes, you're just angry about what happened last night. She looked over at Naruto who sat cross-legged in the middle of the room. He's genuinely a good person. Could he cast her dubious look, she muttered, biased much. Rogue turned to her roommate with an angry expression, what's that supposed to mean? She asked. Dean tried to act as the peacekeeper, calm down, Naruto already apologized for what his clones did. Evan grinned, if Auntie O can vouch for him, he's all good in my book. Besides, if what the professor said about Naruto was true, he could not wait to learn some cool ninja tricks. Aurora strode into the room carrying an annoyed Kurt with her wind, the blue furry devil shouted, I was in the middle of a game. She said, you can play your game later. She made sure that everyone was accounted for before she began the lesson. Alright, there will be no simulation today. Instead, we will be focusing on your close quarter combat. Kitty raised her hand, doesn't like Logan teach us that already. Logan will be in charge of your group simulations from now on. Aurora addressed, the students all groaned at having to undergo Wolverine's torturous runs. She looked down at Naruto and whispered, your turn. Alright, I want everybody to partner up. He put them all into groups, Jean was partnered up with Rogue, Kitty with Kurt and Evan with Scott. Let's do some group stretches. The class began with a series of stretches and partner exercises where Naruto taught them some basic grapples and katas. He was surprised by how quickly Kitty had picked them up, despite the girl appearing quite vain, she possessed a very sharp mind. He smiled slightly as he remembered who she reminded him of. The class continued for another half hour until they reached the final exercise. Naruto wanted them to spar their partners as a way to assess their progress and to adjust his teaching plan for each of them. Don't use your powers, the aim of the exercise is to either submit your opponent or to take them off the mat. Rogue and Jean, if you will, Naruto asked. Jean and Rogue stood in front of each other, they bowed genially, but it was easy to see that neither girl particularly fancied the other. Begin. Jean shot her legs forward as she attempted a roundhouse kick towards Rogue's midsection. Naruto grinned as he watched Rogue simply lean back and deflect the kick towards the side, leaving her exposed to a spinning back kick that hit Jean straight in the stomach. Jean fell onto the ground, gasping slightly as her breathing was disrupted. Naruto blew his whistle, Jean is out of bounds, the winner is Rogue. Rogue gave Jean a triumphant smile as she walked away, Naruto sighed at the hostility between the two of them, he offered Jean his arm and helped her up. Next, Scott and Evan. Both of the boys gave each other a fist bump before they moved to either side of the mat. Once the fight had started, they dashed towards each other with no particular style in mind than to simply pummel the other. Scott had the upper hand in technique, whilst Evan possessed much greater natural strength and durability. Scott learned that immediately when Evan blocked one of his punches, he winced in slight pain as he felt his knuckles crack from the hardness of Evan's bones. He gritted his teeth, Scott moved despite the pain, he dodged Evan's punch and delivered a powerful uppercut to the boy's chin, his right hand was definitely broken now. Evan stumbled back but controlled himself in time to dodge a shove from Scott, he punched Scott's face. Crack. Scott was blown back by Evan's sheer strength, but he would not lose, he held himself on and continued marching towards him. Evan raised his hands when he saw Scott's bleeding knuckles and swollen cheek, "Look, man, I don't want to continue, it's cool teacher's ein." Naruto nodded, grateful that he didn't have to stop the fight, he looked at Scott who growled at Evan. He had severely misjudged the Summers boy, the boy certainly didn't possess any sort of tactical mastery or notable charisma, but he was the leader of this team solely because of his conviction. What it was, he had no idea, but it was enough for him to fight through all that pain. "That's enough class for today," Naruto said, they all gave their thanks and began to file out of the room. He watched as Scott gave a castaway look towards his yang seal before grimacing and walking away. Naruto sighed, that boy was too proud to admit that he wanted him to heal him. "Is this what Bachan always felt? I need a drink." Aurora muttered, "I'll go check on him." Naruto broadcasted his thoughts, telling the professor that he was going out. Exploring New York City in the dead of the night was a completely different experience than it was in the day, it seemed like that was when all the wrong kinds of people decided it was time to venture out. He found himself in the middle of Chinatown, a place that reminded him very slightly of home. He stopped in front of a Japanese bar, the familiar scent of dango and ramen attracted him. "How can I help you?" an old Japanese woman asked gently. "Can I have some ramen?" Naruto asked, "and a bottle of sake." The woman bowed and disappeared into the back to cook his food. Naruto looked around the room and saw dozens of couples conversing and eating, he wondered how they could be so blissfully ignorant with all the crimes and villains terrorizing the city. He heard the brief screeching of the chair beside him as a woman sat beside him. "Mind if I join you?" Nick Fury sat agitatedly in his office. The commander of the world's greatest secret service had found himself once more at the helm of another alien incursion. It started a couple of days ago when a powerful energy surge was detected outside of the Sanctum Sanctorum in New York. He had immediately sent for a convoy to intercept what he believed to be a weapon that had somehow come to Earth via a dimensional rift. To his surprise, the cause was a seemingly ordinary teenage boy, and he appeared to be under the protection of the Fantastic Four. The group that he unsurprisingly was not on the greatest terms with at the moment, he guessed any sane parent would become enraged if they discovered that their son was under federal surveillance. In his defense, there was no way he could let a child that turned the universe into his puppet walk around unsupervised. In response, Reed had made the Baxter building a black box, almost virtually impossible to spy on from the outside or the inside. It didn't help that this newcomer was more than likely an alpha or above level threat if his fight with Claw was anything to go by. And if things couldn't get any worse, the boy was now under Xavier's protection. Damn telepath would be able to uncover any of his operatives from 100 miles away. Fury's thoughts were disrupted by a sudden knock on his door, he pinched his nose in annoyance when he saw who it was. "Come in." Maria Hill casually walked into the room. Her grin seemed to indicate the absence of trouble. "Report," Fury commanded. "We got him, sir," Maria announced. Her hands hovered over her watch as she projected a holographic screen towards Fury. "Satellite feeds show that he is currently alone in New York. We won't get a better opportunity than this." Fury asked, "Do we know where he is heading?" "He's been circling Chinatown for the last half hour, probably looking for something to eat." They watched as their target stopped in front of a Japanese bar, he entered the establishment. Fury typed a few words on the terminal and the CCTV of the bar appeared on the screen. Maria could see that he was currently evaluating his current options. She wondered what he would choose. A hit squad? Would he send an agent? Or would he go himself to greet their alien friend? Fury muttered, "Get me Widow, I have a mission for her." "Sir, I'm afraid Widow is currently dealing with a problem in Madripoor," Maria reminded him. "Why not use Agent Drew, she is better equipped to handle such a mission." Fury gazed at his deputy with a slight smirk, "You've already got a plan of your own, don't you?" He hummed slightly in appreciation, "Very well, task Agent Drew with a mission." Maria looked at her commander with slightly wide eyes, though he would not say it directly, he was giving her full control of the op. She bowed, "Right away, sir." Fury watched as she walked towards the door and Maria. He called out, the woman stopped by the door to hear he had to say. "If you mess up, it's on your head." She nodded in understanding as she exited the room. Now all that was left was to wait and see what would happen. He had a feeling that this mission would go anything but right. Restaurant Chinatown. "Mind if I join you?" Black hair spilt into his vision as the mysterious woman shifted her body towards his own. Naruto blushed slightly as he peered over towards her. Her pretty green eyes danced with mirth as she saw his reaction. "Be my guest." He replied apprehensively. He secretly went about creating a contingency if things went awry. She smiled wolfishly. Don't look so frightened, I don't bite much. Naruto picked up the bottle of sake and drank another shot from his sakazuki. He offered her the bottle and the woman took it graciously. Jessica drew. She introduced herself. Naruto. Nice to meet you. I haven't seen you around here before, are you new to New York City? Jessica asked as she took a sip from her drink. He chuckled sheepishly. What gave it away? Was it the accent? Jessica merely pointed towards his whisker-like marks. That and one rarely forget someone with your appearance. Even in a city filled with superhumans. She said knowingly. Naruto raised an eyebrow at that. He had no idea that his whisker mark stuck out so much, which he admittedly should have realized sooner. He decided to recompense on the topic later as the old woman walked out of the kitchen with his bowl of steaming ramen. It had been far too long since he had last eaten a nice bowl of ramen or any food that he enjoyed for that matter. Naruto had to stop himself from devouring the bowl in one go in fear that he would embarrass himself in front of his guest. You come here often then? Naruto asked as he finished his bowl of ramen. Jessica nodded. Japanese food is a guilty pleasure of mine. The food here is a good balance between being tasty and relatively cheap. Naruto snorted slightly. There was no way the food here was cheap, as for its taste it certainly wasn't Ichiraku's, but it was decent enough that he felt that he hadn't been ripped off. So, tell me Naruto. Where are you from? She asked sultrily, her body relaxed slightly. He could tell something was wrong straight away, as his senses were suddenly bombarded with Jessica's overpoweringly enchanting scent. His mind began to numb slightly, and he felt everything except Jessica become hazy as a sudden powerful desire overcame him. The effects were incredibly subtle and would have fooled him had it not been for his empathetic abilities. Kurama chuckled. Ha, brat. The first woman to hit on you in this world is trying to honeypot you. Sorry to break apart your voyeuristic fantasies, furball. Naruto grinned as he heard his partner make a blanching sound, but I have a spy to deal with. He turned his gaze to Jessica who appeared alarmed by the sudden control of his body. I'll give you one chance to tell me why you're spying on me. Or I'm going to have to rip it out of you. Orange flickers of energy danced across his body in a warning. Jessica raised her hands in surrender. I had to know for sure it was you. Naruto raised an eyebrow in question. You're quite famous, you know. She pulled out her phone and typed something into the search engine, and a video of him fighting Claw appeared on the screen. To his surprise, the video had been watched over 7 million times. And what would you have done if I was the real deal? He asked, not at all believing what she was saying. She placed a translucent card with a large A in red on the table. Naruto assumed that it belonged to the agency she was working. Avengers. He muttered to himself, the name sounded familiar, but he couldn't remember who they were. Jessica nodded, I want you to join the Avengers. Sparks of yellow electricity began to branch from her fingertips. We could always use a strong hero like you. Hero? Naruto's eyes widened in recognition, so you're a part of them. Reed did tell me that you guys were the good guys. So, what do you say? She asked hopefully, knowing that this would be the only to extract information from him. Jessica stared into his eyes, they looked so tired and weary of the world around him. Naruto stood up abruptly, well, can't say that I'm not flattered for the invitation, but I'm already a part of a team. He replied. Still, if you guys are ever in need of help. I'm sure you know where to find me. Naruto gave her a wink as he disappeared in a gust of wind, leaving Jessica to look pointedly at the CCTV camera above her. Her phone vibrated loudly. Jessica found herself paling slightly as she read the details of the message. It seemed that Fury was now at the helm of the operation, and the director had no plans of letting Naruto go. Jessica stood up, paying her tab before heading over to the nearest rendezvous point. All the while not seeing that she was being tailed. Remind me again why we are following her, Kurama asked his partner as he jumped across a rooftop. Couldn't we just use Genjutsu or that blasted human path to rip the information out of her? Naruto replied, I'd rather not fight all the Avengers at once. Besides, I'm not quite sure she was being honest back there. He narrowed his eyes as he watched Jessica come to a stop in an alleyway. She rapped her fist harshly against the metal door. A man opened the door and allowed Jessica entry. He smirked triumphantly as his hunch was proven true. Kurama rolled his eyes, okay genius, what's your next move? You can't hear them and you don't have a Byakugan. I can't risk them knowing that I'm onto them. Naruto said, for now we just wait. Kurama grumbled in annoyance at Naruto's newfound likeness of subtlety and espionage. He decided to retreat into a slumber to avoid having to suffer from this long-winded stakeout. Kurama, Naruto asked, do you feel that? Kurama opened his eyes slightly, he could feel an intense feeling of hatred sweeping the city. It feels like electricity. And it was building up at an incredible rate until it hit some sort of critical point and dissipated. And then the city fell into the darkness, someone or something had switched all of the lights in New York City. Boom. The sound of an explosion faintly echoed across the city. The origin was likely not even in the city, but Naruto could tell that by the sense of urgency and the amount of personnel that had run out of Jessica's hideout that it was more than likely a big deal. Jessica rushed out of the building dressed in a skin-tight red and yellow costume. She pressed a button and some sort of motorbike revealed itself. Naruto snorted in slight indignation as the bike zoomed across the sky, no doubt towards the source of the explosion. Kurama growled, "Naruto. She's going to get herself killed." That feeling of malice was slowly becoming clearer to him, and it was originating from one but multiple individuals in the same area. TCH. Naruto sighed, and to think this all started with a pretty lady. He blasted himself into the air and followed straight after her. Jessica gritted her teeth in frustration as she constantly maneuvered her bike to avoid the large arcs of electricity flying all over the place. Of all the places for Electro to throw a temper tantrum, it had to be the raft. The bastard had just released every major villain in the city and more. Electricity rippled out once more, this time striking a helicopter above her, causing it to explode. Jessica jumped off her bike in time to avoid being crushed by flying debris. She controlled herself midair and began to glide towards the island. She landed on the landing pad of the raft. The entire island was in a state of chaos. Agents trying their best to contain the prisoners with a few heroes assisting them. She found herself jumping to the side to avoid a dagger thrown towards her chest. Bioelectricity ran through her hands as she fired a venom blast against her perpetrator. One down. And just as she was about to engage another prisoner, her body was thrown into the air by a scream. Songbird and Abomination appeared from below, destroying several floors to get to the surface. Abomination jumped high into the air. Jessica tried to dodge him, but he merely grabbed her by her foot and sent her flying straight into the ground. Jessica coughed up some blood. The impact had more than likely broken some bones. Songbird grinned maniacally, "Think I've forgotten about what you did to me, little spider." She screamed and Jessica quickly covered her eyes to stop from being knocked unconscious, but it did little to protect her from the disorientation. Jessica could barely see the falling Abomination aiming straight at her prone form. She tried to get up, but Songbird's cry made it impossible. A flash of yellow sparked across her vision. Abomination was sent straight through the entirety of the raft and into the ocean. Jessica didn't know to feel relieved or worried when Naruto appeared in front of her. "Seems like I got here just in time." His palm touched her chest, and Jessica felt her body heal immediately from her injuries. Now Naruto didn't answer her as he moved towards Songbird. The woman let out a scream, but Naruto moved so fast that the sound didn't even leave her vocal cords yet. He gripped her by the neck and slammed her body straight into the ground. Songbird immediately fell unconscious. He moved immediately to engage more prisoners. A flash of brilliant yellow light danced around the raft, knocking dozens of prisoners out by the second. "Jess." Carol Danvers landed slowly beside her best friend, "Are you alright?" Jessica nodded slightly, "I'm fine though I would have been mice meat if it weren't for him." She pointed towards Naruto who was busy making short work out of the reeking crew. Fury had said that he was strong, but this was pure insanity. He was pulling out powers as if they trading cards. Carol grinned, He might be as strong as me." She released a blast of energy to stop two attackers from coming near them. "Can you still fight?" she asked. Jessica nodded, "Where are the others?" Carol shrugged, "Most are stopping those who manage to leave the island. Pretty sure all the heavy hitters have left by now, but I'm here just in case. I'm going to have some fun now." Carol blasted herself into the air. Jessica shook her head in amusement as she jumped down into the building to capture those who were hiding and to gain some insight into what had occurred her. "I am Carnage." Naruto frowned at how much people the thing had killed. It didn't seem to discriminate at all. Red tendrils shot out towards Naruto who simply zoomed past it. "This is getting old fast," Naruto muttered to himself as he knocked another lackey unconscious on his way to the control room. More footsteps echoed around him as he was approached by a dozen or so more bodyguards. "You guys keep coming and coming, don't you?" He didn't have the time to deal with them. He could feel the same energy building up again from within the control room. Whoever it was, they were planning on doing something else. Naruto ran through a series of hands as he dodged several blade attacks. Ton. Renkin. He expelled a large bullet of air that spiraled into walls, blowing them and the attackers apart. Naruto stared at the two villains who were situated in the now borderless control room. "If you're going to use an army, you might want to hire a competent one next time," he said. "He laughs at us, Electro." The red slime-like creature hissed towards the leader, "He dares to laugh at Carnage." Red tendrils dashed towards Naruto intent on piercing his body, but he simply surrounded himself with his truth-seeking balls. Carnage screeched in pain as it found its tendrils vaporized upon contact with Naruto's cocoon. The symbiote's anger overrode its rational faculties as he grew many times its eyes and began to hammer against the black wall to no avail. Naruto peeked through the shield, "Are you done?" Carnage's eyes widened slightly as the truth-seeking ball spun and lanced straight through its body. The symbiote let out a straight gasp as its form was blown apart and pulled onto the ground. How pitiful. Naruto stared at the unmoving pool of red liquid before focusing his attention on Electro. Give up, you can't defeat me. You should have escaped when you still could. I know that I can't defeat you. Electricity poured out of him, entering all the control panel and sending everything haywire. Naruto sensed something deep within the earth beginning to stir, a rage, unlike anything that he had ever felt. The raft began to shake, metal began to bend downward, and a huge wave of gravity forced everybody onto the ground. Electro let out a strained chuckle, but he can. Graviton is going to destroy the city, and there is nothing you heroes can do about it. Fury. A voice boomed across the entire raft, bring me, Nick Fury. The island itself began to get crushed from Graviton's fury. Naruto acted quickly, slamming his hand onto the ground, Doten. Chinkijin no Jutsu. The immense pressure suddenly ceased, Naruto needed to get Graviton before he realized that his gravity had been countered. Kurama, I might need you for this one. Finally. Kurama growled, the bastard is currently floating above us, let's surprise it with a Bijuodama. Naruto chuckled, I'd rather not blow everyone up, at least not yet. Naruto flew straight up, he saw Graviton staring angrily at Triskelion floating above the city. Naruto conjured one of his truth-seeking balls, he turned it into a lance and fired it straight at Graviton's back. It hit him dead on, but to Naruto's surprise, it did not leave a single scratch. Who are you? Graviton questioned as he turned himself around. Did Fury send you too? The man's eyes were bloodshot and he appeared in a weird state of delirium as he kept muttering to himself. Naruto answered, I have no idea who that is, but you need to stop before you kill any more people. Like he did my family, my daughter, Graviton said angrily. Gravity increased immediately around Naruto as he made a crushing motion with his fist. Fury will die today. Naruto's eyes flashed red, but killing innocent people won't bring them back. He gritted his teeth in pain as an immense gravity began to collapse onto him. What are you waiting for, you? Kurama growled at his partner, at this rate, we'll be turned into mush. Just a little bit more. Naruto said he felt his bones creak and crack from the pressure. Now Amenetejakara. Graviton felt his body switch with Naruto, he flinched slightly as he was trapped in his gravitational field. A loud screeching noise echoed through the air, Graviton turned around to see a spinning ball of lava heading his way, Senm. Imton Rasen Shuriken. The Rasen Shuriken hit the immobile Graviton straight on, growing in size till it exploded in a fiery explosion consuming him completely. Did that do it? Naruto wondered. The chuckle resounded from the epicenter, foolish child, do you not understand what I am? I hold the power of the universe itself. A wave of oppressive gravity spread outwards consuming the entire city in its grasp. Graviton emerged. His body slightly singed but completely unaffected by the Rasen Shuriken. I cannot be defeated. A beam of yellow energy slammed into him from above, Graviton was sent scrying into the ocean from the impact. Heard that line before, Frankie boy. Captain Marvel descended from the clouds, need some help, Naruto? She inquired. Naruto stared carefully at the blonde woman, Carol. Seeing that Naruto's apprehension said, I'm Carol. Jess's friend. Naruto muttered to himself, explains the uniform. Or lack thereof, Naruto was wondering why so many of these heroes in uniforms that offered less than adequate protection. Carol didn't have any time to reply as Graviton used his gravity to send thousands of jagged projectiles and large structures towards the two of them. Orange chakra erupted around Naruto and Captain Marvel, consuming them as it stitched itself together and formed the Kyuubi. The nine tails roared in anger, blasting away them with ease. Captain Marvel asked, what is this? A little trick of mine. Naruto replied, Kurama, are you ready? What do you take me for? I'm always ready, Kurama growled as he opened his mouth. Black energy seeped together until it was large enough that it eclipsed the entire size of the raft. Bijuodama. The ball of condensed chakra lasered straight into the ocean, blasting it apart in an unearthly explosion, leaving it swirling around the point of impact. Captain Marvel whistled, you sure do pack quite a punch, but Graviton kneeled at the bottom of the ocean, panting loudly as his left hand hung limply against his body. The bastard had somehow tanked the Bijuodama, though at least Naruto now knew that he could be defeated by physical attacks. If this went on for any longer, he was going to use his more esoteric abilities, something that he wasn't keen on showing these people. I'll kill you all. Graviton roared in anger, this time not increasing gravity, but lowering it. The earth below them shook as Naruto realized what the man was about to do. He was going to lift not just the raft but the entirety of New York City. Harold dashed out of the Kyuubi's energy intent on blitzing Graviton, but the bastard had planned for them. He waved his hand, and the pair were sent straight into the bottom of the ocean. Kurama let out a howl as it tried to get up under Graviton's excessive gravity. Naruto struggled to lift his head towards where he sensed Graviton was, besides being crushed by the gravity, this worked immensely to his advantage. Kurama sensed his partner's thoughts, Naruto, don't tell me you. His Rincharingan blared to life, blood poured out of it. Graviton had won, the heroes were still busy trying to protect the city, and he was free to do as he pleased. If Nick Fury wouldn't come out of hiding, then he would destroy New York, and if that didn't work, he would continue until there was no place on Earth left for him. He had a black hand pierced into his chest. Graviton's eyes widened as he coughed up a glob of blood. He looked behind him in fear as he saw the shadow of Naruto. How? He whispered in pain, but the shadow was incapable of speech. Space opened up, he felt hundreds of black arms reaching out of it, their whispers grew louder and louder, begging for him to join them. Franklin Hall let out a scream as he dragged into the void, the hands covered his entire body, dissolving into black tar that soon after consumed his entire body. And just as quickly as the rift opened, it disappeared. Gravity returned to normal, the city and island jolted back into place, causing some major damage to infrastructure. Kurama returned to Naruto's mindscape, he whispered dangerously, "Naruto. Please don't tell me you were that foolish." Naruto replied solemnly, "I did what I did to survive." The purpose of limbo eluded Madara, he was incapable of understanding what it truly was. Kurama growled, "Souls, Naruto. You are playing with souls just like Kagaya. Why? Tell me why, Naruto." Naruto shut off his connection as he emerged from the water alongside Carol, he had no answer for Kurama. The dream dimension had turned him into a monster that he wished didn't exist, some of the stuff he had done was unforgivable, but he wouldn't have been here standing otherwise. There was a reason why Nightmare was unable to kill him. And it wasn't because of Kurama or for the being's amusement. Carol tapped him on the shoulder, "You alright?" He snapped out his thoughts and nodded slowly, "I can't see him anywhere." Naruto shrugged, "Beats me." She gave him a knowing smirk as if she had sensed that he lying, "Well, wherever he is, I hope he doesn't ever find his way back." There was no chance of that happening, Franklin Hall was no longer part of the living. On the other hand, I'm not quite sure that we'll be alive to see that happening. Naruto looked above and saw 3 huge floating ships tower above them. "This is shield, desist, or we will be forced to fire." Several holes opened from the side of the ship, revealing an arsenal of guns and missiles. "Are they trying to kill us?" Carol chuckled, knowing Fury, he's probably thought about it. She gave him a pointed look, "He's going to want to meet you. And running away will only make them more interested. I guess it's a bit too late to return to the shadows." He saw dozens of heroes and hundreds of agents enter the raft, working on recoloring the prisoners and escorting them onto one of the helicarriers. "We should help," Naruto said. Carol nodded, though she was more intent on checking up on Jessica and the others than aiding the agents handcuff the prisoners. Naruto landed in the middle of the yard, where some of the agents were having trouble with prisoners resisting arrest. He channeled his Uzumaki chakra, chains sprouted from the ground and grasped onto the legs of the prisoners. They were bound on the spot, unable to move, allowing for the agents to put collars on their necks. Naruto heard more fighting from inside the raft, he realized it was going to be one long night. 200 civilians dead, billions in property damage, and 20 villains currently running wild. Nick Fury shouted at the 5 heroes present. "What do you guys have to say for yourselves?" Captain America addressed the director, "There was nothing we could have done to prevent this." Fury roared, "You chose to focus on the momentary distractions in the city than the actual threat." He played a video of Naruto fighting Graviton, and to further your failure, the actual perpetrators of the event took advantage of the chaos to flee. Captain America stood steadfast, there were civilians that needed to be protected, reclaiming the raft was secondary to protecting human life. Fury grunted in response, he stared briefly at Tony Stark, who was busy with one of his holograms. "What are you doing, Stark?" Tony flipped his hologram and expanded it for the group. "Someone hacked the raft's camera feeds. I hacked into the raft to try and see who would have access to the control room." They watched as a warden walked into the room, stared into the camera and hacked it. "So whose incompetence and negligence are we evaluating here, Fury?" Maria Hill stepped forward, "Careful, Stark." She warned, "We both know that shield doesn't operate the raft." Naruto whispered, "No, you just kill them or bury your demons so deep underground that they never find their way to the surface." He didn't like the feeling that he got from the leader. Nick Fury reminded him too much of Danzo. Maria Hill replied, "Shield does what is necessary, you would understand that if you were human." The other heroes turned towards Naruto in surprise, "You think we wouldn't notice you flaunting your powers like a petulant child? You are a threat to humanity." Naruto narrowed his eyes angrily, "Careful, woman. I'm not in the mood to play." Golden chakra erupted around him in a protective cloak, Kurama's head formed and letting out its usual malice, paralyzing her in fear. Fury warned, "Hill, enough." Naruto looked surprised that Fury was unaffected by the Kyuubi's presence, it was rare to see such resolve in a person. He looked at Naruto harshly, resorting to such tactics might give him the wrong impression. "I can say the same about you." Naruto pointed towards Jessica, "If I were so inclined, I could have killed your agent, but I didn't. Heck, I even saved her whilst your heroes were busy." Fury purposefully stepped towards the light, and you think I owe you anything? My agents are always ready to die. Naruto frowned slightly at Nick Fury's tone despite understanding where the man was coming from, but unlike Hill, I am not so unwilling to compromise my interests. I believe that we can reach an accord. An accord? Naruto questioned. If you think that I am going to join SHIELD, you're off your head. Oni chuckled, too late for that big shot, I wouldn't be surprised if you aren't stapled all over the news tomorrow. Naruto sighed in annoyance. He wasn't looking forward to turning into Johnny anytime soon. Join the Avengers, we could use someone like you. Stark leant down and whispered into his ear, besides you might just find that you've piqued the interest of one or two women. I heard that, Stark. Carol snarled, if you even think about spreading your ways, you'll find yourself armorless for more than a week this time. Stop with your bickering. Fury said sternly, so what do you say? I'm sure Xavier won't mind. Naruto somehow highly doubted that, considering that Fury never bothered to confront him at the Baxter building or the X-Mansion. Give me some time. A black stitch in space opened behind him, don't bother coming towards me, I'll find you. They watched as he fell into the void. Stark quickly rushed towards it to examine it, but it disappeared as quickly as it came. Jessica Drew turned towards Fury, you and I need to have words, Director. Naruto landed harmlessly in his bedroom at the Xavier Institute, I suspect you had somewhat of a fruitful evening, Naruto. Naruto grinned slightly, more than fruitful professor, I may have gained something of a tactical advantage. Fury was a fool for trusting him onto his ship, the shadows would forever be watching him now. It was cold in Siberia this time of year. It was always bloody cold in Siberia even for a shapeshifter. Thousands of miles from her home, in a godforsaken land, Mystique found herself searching for hours on end for her treasure. A mutant capable of changing the tide of war, Xavier was foolish in instating his policy of sticking to the Americas. He only truly ventured outside the states if an Omega-level mutant showed up on Cerebro, but such instances were very rare, and even Magneto chose to surrender them up to Xavier. After all, Jean Grey had taught them an important lesson when she almost leveled a street with the slightest change in mood. She came to a stop on a mountain overlooking a small town filled with shimmering lights, a smirk played on her lips. Home sweet home, Red. The man beside her simply growled, twin metal tentacles crackled with electricity as he whipped the ground. Omega Red wasn't much of a speaker, nor was he intelligent enough to do anything other than what he was created for. Let's go, the faster we capture them. The quicker I can get rid of you. You hired me, woman. He growled. Mystique smiled as she shifted into a raven, precisely. With a loud caw, she took off into the air and flew towards the outer ridges of the town. A heavily secured facility with enough firepower to wage war on a small country, hid behind glaciers and mountains. It was ironic really, that after all her failures to procure Magneto's favor, it would be his blood that would free her from her chains. Omega Red hopped of his hoverbic near an air vent, your call. He murmured gruffly. Mystique took a moment to respond, flooded. There was a brief hiss from the mutant, and a dark purple cloud slowly began to seep out of his skin and into the air vent. Soon, it encompassed the entire base like a dark and heavy fog. Mystique flew high to avoid catching a whiff of Red's death spores, she could see the faint hints of men and women falling onto the ground. Convulsing and shaking before they lay still. Omega Red jumped into the fog, his tentacles foraying into the mud and emerging all around the masked guards. They were caught unaware, unable to even move before they were ripped apart with needle-like precision. Wake her up. We're under attack. A guard shouted through his radio just before his chest was speared open by two sharp talons. Mystique landed at the edge of the complex, away from Omega's rampage as she inspected the prone guard. Ivan, report. Here. Mystique said, shape-shifting into the unmoving man, what do you need? Oh, thank God, what is going on? Mystique said with some urgency, poison she coughed loudly, we're under attack, he's already killed most of the unit. There was a twinge of disbelief in the man's voice, you mean to tell me that one man could cause all this? He's a mutate. She whispered, we need to use her sir. Or else we won't be leaving this base alive. The major sighed, very well. I will send a message to the Kremlin for some backup as well. Mystique swore under her breath at the complication to her plan, the Russian government would likely send their elite superhuman task force, and if Red was to be believed, there was a good chance that they were in possession of Hydra's speeders. Ivan, meet me in Hangar 14. She cast a look towards Omega Red through the purple fog, the man only nodded as he launched himself into the air with his tentacles. Mystique walked through the graveyard of bodies to her prize, for once she would not have her plans spoiled by insolent children or meddling telepaths. Her grin faded as she entered the hangar and saw the state of the girl's captivity, impossible. She thought angrily, I thought Wolverine destroyed it. Magneto's daughter lay in a tank filled to the brim with that same sickly manipulating liquid that had become prevalent during her days with Weapon X. Come. We must inject the fluid into her before she wakes. the major said as he flicked several switches around the tank. There was a brief stutter before the unmistakable sound of live machinery whirred throughout the room, but it was overshadowed by the loud rapping of Omega Red's tentacles against the metal door. "Forget that, we have to wake her now." The major looked at his frightened colleague and wondered what sort of demon could invoke such a reaction. He couldn't inquire any further, and in any event, they were out of time. May God help us all. He sighed in resignation as he pulled a lever, the glass tank collapsed, and the green liquid pooled out into the ground. Mystique dashed out from beside the man with surprising speed and caught the unconscious girl before she could hit the ground. She glared over her shoulder, "No one will save you today, Major." And as sudden as her heroics, she drew a P-96 from the holster and hip-fired several bullets into the middle-aged soldier's midriff. He gasped out in pure shock, not able to believe what had just transpired. Ivan, why?" Mystique shifted into her original form. A sinister smile played on her ruby-red lips as she looked upon the man. "For mutant kind." A final gunshot echoed throughout the room, "And what I do to you is for the betterment of our kind." The girl in her arms awoke with a start, and for a moment the world around them came to a standstill. Green eyes peered up at her with some suspicion. "Who are you?" she asked angrily. Mystique almost dropped the girl when she felt the earth around her feet wrap around her feet. She could feel it ready to swallow her whole, if the girl so wished it. "I've been looking for you for a very long time," she said slowly. "Your family, they recruited me to find you and bring you home." "Why, you know Pietro?" Her grip on Mystique's body slowly loosened. "I thought they killed him." Red energy danced from the girl's hand. There was barely any time for Mystique to cloud her mind before it was attacked. Mystique's eyes rolled back, visions of Pietro and Magneto that she had never experienced flitted across her mind. She had never felt such an odd ability before. It wasn't telepathy in the general sense, but as if her mind was unraveling itself to her will. Mystique fell onto the ground, barely able to keep herself conscious from the mental onslaught. Her blurry vision focused on the girl who was now crying. "Do you believe me now?" she said. "I can take you home. Wanda." And in a rare show of affection, Mystique wrapped her arms around the emotional teen, cradling and whispering sweet calming words in her ears. All the while planning on how best to use her new addition to the Brotherhood against Xavier. Soon, the X-Men would lay broken and defeated by her feet. Meditation had been something that Naruto had been teaching his new students ever since he had arrived, and yet, none of them particularly enjoyed nor understood the importance of it. Of course, he was happy to do it on his lonesome every morning, resolute in trying to finally unlock the final path of the Rinnegan, but he was making little to no progress with it, especially since a certain someone was doing his best to disrupt his chakra. "Kurama," he thought harshly, "don't make me put you to sleep." There was a brief rumble in the depths of his mind and then a veritable snort, as if to say that he wasn't capable of such a thing. Naruto sighed at his partner's behavior. Kurama hadn't spoken to him since they had fought against Graviton. And whilst Naruto knew that he wouldn't sabotage him during a life-or-death situation, he was still annoyed by his lack of understanding. The souls that lay in Nightmare's realm were disfigured to the point that they were barely even sentient. He made a choice, a selfish one, but it was the only one he had that would have helped him survive that barren world, or Sasuke's sacrifice would have been for nothing. His fingers twitched briefly as he sensed something behind him. A pillar of metal shot out from the danger room ground and blocked Scott's optic beam. "You're going to have to try better than that, Shades," he shouted, flipping over the metal pole with incredible ease and speed. "Though I suppose congratulations are in order if you manage to complete the course before I finished my meditation." Evan grinned. "Piece of cake, teach." He grabbed a bone spear from the head of one of the robot drones and threw it across the large hall into one of the crawling bots. "Pietro ain't gonna be ready for us." "Calm yourself, Evan," Aurora said. "It's never a good idea to underestimate your opponent." Lightning flashed in the air, emerging from all directions towards her nephew who stood there in shock. Scott decided that now was a good time as any to test out the new energy dampeners that Beast had installed into the danger room. Aurora watched unimpressed as her Lightning W0 is drawn towards raised platforms and siphoned into the room. "Would you do that?" "I had it," Evan said, glaring at Cyclops for intervening. "Oh yeah?" Rogue questioned sarcastically, "And what were you planning on doing? Throw your bones at it?" "You can't talk. Ever since you sealed your powers, you've been more useless than Toad." Evan spun out of the room with a fury that he was not at all known for. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the boy's uncharacteristic behavior. He had always been the most laid back of all his students, but he supposed even he was prone to hormonal outbursts. Aurora on the other hand wasn't having it all and roared out her nephew's name as she chased after him. He sighed. "He'll get an extra session just for that, but the rest of you have a few more sessions to go through." There was a brief grumble for the group and Naruto grinned sadistically at them. "And just to keep you on your toes, I am going to take command and enhancing the robots." His Rinnegan blared to life and grotesquely his arms bulged and stretched obscenely until 3 pairs of metal arms whirred madly by his side. Long metallic tendrils attached themselves to his back from the wall, and Naruto felt himself digitalize into the mainframe of the danger room. "I cannot move in this mode," he said through the speakers. The room shifted into a carbon copy of Midtown New York. "As such, I won't be able to fight you directly, but you won't be able to stop the simulation until you manage to cut the feeder cable attached to me." Kurt, as usual, took the initiative and teleported above Naruto, but he was met by several homing missiles. There was barely any time for him to escape as a skyscraper was blown apart. "Remember, you stronger as a unit. I expect much better coordination if you are going to reach me." "Gene," Scott said, destroying one of Naruto's drones before it could attack them. "We need to put some distance between us and them." The Redeed simply raised her hand, and the falling debris from the destroyed building flew towards Naruto. The bots flew into the air, circling Naruto whilst they bombarded the debris to dust. Naruto muttered, "Smart, but it won't be so easy to evade me next time." He was still acclimatizing himself to controlling dozens of bots at once. And this was utilizing just one of the paths. He realized that it must have been incredibly taxing for Nagato to use the 6 paths the way he did. His drone levitated high enough for none of them to notice as they planned for their next move. Of course, none of that mattered, considering that the only one who could match his firepower was Gene. Scott muttered, "How do we do this?" Everyone appeared shocked that he was asking for advice, but he looked stumped on how to even get close to Naruto. Those robots had been buffed with more energy than he could generate with his optic beams, and that's not even taking into account that Naruto had somehow become the danger room. "Kurt is our best asset, he's the only person that can get past the inner ring," Gene said, "but if we're going to beat him, we need to make it look as if we've lost." Scott agreed at her assessment. It seemed that if they were going to win that they would have to sacrifice themselves. "This is pure suicide." He looked at her with a grin. "I like it. Kitty and I are going to make a pass for the center. Rogue will hang back and absorb our powers if we get tagged. Remember, we're only going to get one chance, don't miss it." Kurt teleported away with Gene. The two of them would have to stay hidden if this absurd plan was going to work at all. Above, a drone spiraled down towards them. Cyclops' visor glowed a hellish red as he fired a beam of red energy straight towards it. The drone fired off 2 missiles just before it was consumed. Kitty quickly grabbed Rogue and Cyclops' hand and melded under the ground to avoid the impact. They emerged a little away from Naruto's limp body, which seemed to be completely unguarded. "You can't hide from me," Naruto roared. Several metallic-looking insects began to crawl around the 3 of them. They began to glow a hot red and sizzle as Scott realized that they were going to explode. "Katsu." His whisper ironically spread all around the room, and the trigger word didn't them any favors as an entire block was vaporized in an instant. Ping. "Rogue has been retired from the session. Cyclops has been retired from the session." That left the most troublesome of the X-Men, especially since Kurt and Kitty possessed such evasive powers, and he was unable to use his Fuinjutsu or speed in this mode. He controlled the majority of his bots to fly overhead, scanning as much of the terrain as he could, but they seemed to have all disappeared. Several alarms in his HUD blared to life around him as Gene and Kurt teleported into his view. He fired a dozen missiles towards them, but Gene's telekinetic ability condensed around them, and his drones were destroyed by their weapons. His Rinchringen spun wildly as Gene summoned her telekinesis once more and tried to rip the connector from his back. Rinbo. Hengoku. An invisible force slammed into Gene, throwing her straight through a building. Kurt tried to teleport to her, but found that he was rooted to the spot by the same force. He looked towards Naruto with a smirk, and Naruto's eyes widened slightly as Kitty emerged from the ground. "You forgot about me," she said whilst grabbing hold of the connector and pulling it out of him with a triumphant smile. Only for that smile to falter after a few seconds and turn into one of confusion as she realized that the simulation nor Naruto had moved. Something was wrong. Kurt shouted, "Watch out, Kitty." But she couldn't phase in time as the connector she was holding snapped around her neck like a snake and zapping her motionless with electricity. End simulation. Naruto's disembodied voice spoke from all directions, his form simply disappearing out of existence as if he was never there. The danger room returned to its default state and the students found themselves staring at Naruto, who was seated opposite them. "That was good," he said, "but you remain unattuned with your minds and unsure of yourselves." Kitty snorted, "It's not like we can beat you anyway." "But that wasn't the aim of the mission," Naruto countered. "Infiltration requires more than just brute force. You need to scout the area, understand your opponent's moves before you act. What good is having a telepath on your team if you can't use her to detect illusions or mental attacks?" Gene looked down with some frustration, but Scott rose to her defense. "It was the best plan we could come up with. She was the only one who could fight you on equal ground." "Equal ground?" Naruto questioned wryly. "You came to my home turf, I was the one defending whilst you attacked. There was never going to be an honorable fight in the middle of the city. No, if this were reality, your plan would have made it easier for me to pick you off one by one." Scott's face grew hot as he realized just how much he had doomed them with his strategy. We failed. Naruto laughed, and you might have thought that Scott's face had turned a darker shade of red than Jean's hair. We will repeat the simulation tomorrow. I expect you all to be better prepared and more focused. The professor wants to discuss something about a survival camp with you all. The students grumbled as they walked out of the room, none of them unable to shake the feeling that he had been toying with them all along. You cheated, Naruto. The professor whispered telepathically, projecting false illusions using the danger room was impressive, but by doing so you placed them in an unwinnable situation. They must improve their mental fortitude, Professor. Naruto countered, or else it won't matter how strong they are because they'll be the ones ripping each other apart. Especially, Jean, she remains hesitant in using her full strength. Be that as it may, you have to remember that they were not born in a world like yours, they were regular people not long ago. And they deserve to keep in touch with that side for as long as possible. Xavier replied, they are not soldiers, Naruto. I created the X-Men to guide them into a world filled with hatred to our species. I'm afraid that so long as such hatred exists, your war will never end, Naruto muttered. And you will have no choice in the matter. The old man reminded him of the third Hokage, and that made him all the more afraid. Despite his powerful mind and wisdom, he was blinded to the true nature of humanity and mutants like Magneto. Dr. Strange disliked telepaths. Ever since his encounter with the Shadow King, he had deemed them to be a nuisance even for a sorcerer such as himself. They were capable of being everywhere at once, but more than anything they frequently couldn't be sealed or defeated. Old friend. Xavier said in his astral form, what can I do for you? I could hear your summons from the institute. He could never get used to how powerful Xavier's mind was, his astral form practically dismissed all the wards in the sanctum. Something is making the demon stronger, Strange growled, his amulet glowing a menacing green as magic spread from it. I thought at first that it was the result of a relic that had fallen into the wrong hands, but the world around them twisted and turned until they were brought in front of a camp filled with teenagers running towards a mountain. Xavier's eyes widened, and no. My students couldn't have. That we can agree on, there's only one in your institute who possesses the talent for the arcane, and he possesses nowhere the level of aptitude to become an embodiment of an abstract. He stared at Charles for a moment, but he didn't whether to feel relieved or confused that they weren't one of his students. Cerebro never picked up its trace, do you know who it is? Strange shook his head, I cannot, I had to break one of the shards of Cindrier to locate them. The enchantment around them scrambles my spell before I can see whoever they are. So, if your students haven't invoked Chtan's name then who else could be there? There was a sense of defeat in Xavier's posture as he muttered a name that Strange was only familiar with in passing. Magneto has been recruiting young mutants to his side in an effort to fulfill his vision, but he would not fall so low as to summon demons. He's always been too proud for that. But there was another who was not and would do anything to get her way. Is it possible for a mutant to be a sorcerer as well? Strange nodded. Anyone can manipulate magic, Charles. Most are too impatient or unwilling to dive into the arcane, but if you are wondering whether a mutant could use magic unconsciously, then I'm afraid I have not encountered any such being. Certainly, there is a possibility that a mutant born with a complementary power could tap into the magic around them. Xavier only had to glance at Strange's stiff body to know that the man was keeping some information from him, but he was unable to inquire as a blaring alarm buzzed throughout his mindscape in the astral plane. Strange asked, what is it? Trouble, old friend. Xavier said with a frown, I must leave you now, we will discuss this new mutant at a more opportune time. Strange watched as the telepath's astral form dissolved in the milky translucent lake of the astral sea. He muttered, I'm afraid we won't get another chance, Charles. The Sorcerer Supreme had been tasked with the impossible task of guarding this world against mystical elements that would endanger humanity. And a mutant who had been touched by Chthon was far too dangerous to be allowed to roam freely. It had to be sealed. Turn that goddamn alarm off, Naruto growled as he made his way into the office. The professor appeared so stunned at the footage on the screen that he did not even respond to him. Naruto watched with interest as a guy dressed in red armor and a large circular helmet slammed his way through a freight train. The train buckled upwards and snapped like a rubber band from the force of him simply just walking into it. Who is that? Xavier sighed, King Marco, my stepbrother. He's an enhanced mutate who jump-started his X-gene by bonding with a shard belonging to the demon Sidorak. Years ago, he made a failed attempt on my life that destroyed a large portion of downtown, but we managed to subdue him and place him in a magical coma of sorts. Well, he's awake now, Bub Logan muttered, and he's heading straight here. The professor paused to enact the emergency lockdown protocol of Mansion, diverting almost all power to the defense system sprawled all over the grounds. Naruto grimaced, he had never seen the old man so afraid of anything. Are you afraid that we can't stop him? I know we can't, Xavier said, his face strangely empty of expression. His mutant power has made him a juggernaut. invulnerable to everything and impossible to stop when he starts to move. An alarm went off as the juggernaut practically unhinged the outer walls with a push. Logan narrowed his eyes angrily at the woman hiding behind Kane. Mystique. I should have known that she was the only one mad enough for something like this. Naruto said, we're running out of time, Charles. Is there anything that we can do to stop him? Yes, my mind, I can disable him with enough psychic blasts. Though he would have to be weakened and without his helmet before I can breach his defenses. Logan grinned at Naruto bloodthirstily, are you thinking what I'm thinking, bub? Naruto's Rincharingan flared to life as a black stitch opened underneath them, swallowing them into the abyss. He opened the portal to send Xavier to the danger room whilst Logan and he appeared above the rampaging Kane Marco. Xavier. Stop hiding and face me, you coward. No one's hiding, bub. Wolverine's unsheathed his claws and swiped them madly across the Juggernaut's armor, but despite his frenzied attacks, there was barely a scratch on him. You done? Juggernaut's amber eyes burned with fury at Wolverine, good. My turn. With surprising speed, he grabbed a hold of Logan and threw him straight through the forest that surrounded the Institute. Naruto appeared in front of Mystique and Juggernaut, surprising both of them. He smirked as he raised his arms and whispered sharply, Shinra Tensei. An inhuman force rippled outwards and struck everything in the grounds around them in a devastating fashion. Trees were uprooted, the earth itself broke apart from the impact, and debris practically hurled itself all around the grounds. The entire front yard had been turned into a crater from the technique, but the target remained unaffected. Juggernaut simply stood there with a grin on his face. He whistled, damn. That packed quite a punch, but I am unstoppable. I am the Juggernaut. He rammed Naruto with his head, launching the man straight into the mansion. Can't take too many of those, Naruto groaned in pain as he got up from the rubble. Kurama. I might need your help for this one. But as it had been for the past few weeks, he had been ignored by the stubborn Biju. Fine. I'll do it myself. He cracked his knuckles as he dashed towards the marching Juggernaut. The mutant was ill-prepared as he was launched back by Naruto's steam-enhanced punch. Steam hot enough to melt titanium began to settle all around them. Juggernaut hissed in pain as Naruto appeared above him and began to pummel him into the ground. Like a propulsion unit, each punch seemed to release even hotter steam. The resultant force of Naruto's punches were multiplied until even the Juggernaut was unable to block them. Naruto grinned bloodthirsty, Sen. Futten Kakiri Musum. The volcanic-like eruption of steam erupted around them as Naruto dodged Juggernaut's attempt to push him and delivered an uppercut that sent him even deeper into the earth. Juggernaut's armor appeared melted, and despite the obvious pain that he was feeling, Naruto could feel the monster's power doubling through an unknown force. Kane howled whilst he swung his arms madly, sending Naruto sailing through the air. Let's see you get up from that, you punk. Naruto's chakra flared menacingly. If Kurama was not going to help him here, he would have to use his bag of tricks that he had developed during his time in the dream dimension if he was going to defeat this monster. Mystique had been fearful of the mysterious man as soon as he appeared. That feeling only multiplied when she saw what he did with 2 words. The devastation that followed was unnatural. Both Juggernaut and the man seemed to be unyielding in their approach to destroy the other. She was lucky enough that the shockwave had not killed her and that the injuries she had sustained weren't a challenge for her healing factor. He was an Omega-level mutant. Mystique gritted her teeth and the dawning realization chilled her. Their battle would not just lead to the destruction of her prize, but the majority of Bayville as well. Juggernaut's power spiked, his punch sent the boy flying through the entire mansion. Only to see him flying through the gap and spearing straight through Kane's shield with those malleable black orbs around him. He was winning. And she was unwilling to summon her trump card, if only because Wanda had yet to properly heal from her imprisonment. I knew I smelt a rat. Logan's growl echoed from below her, his claws cutting the tree she was perched upon with one fell swoop. Mystique smiled tightly, must we do this again, Wolverine? I have more important matters to deal with, and if I remember correctly, I defeated the X-Weapon launched himself towards her in a mad frenzy. It seemed that fateful day was still a touch subject for him. Mystique tried to shift into a bird, only for him to grab her shifting limbs and throw her against a tree. Her plan was falling at the seams, and the longer she stayed here, the more likely she would end up imprisoned by the new mutant or skewered by a berserker Wolverine. Naruto flew high into the air to avoid Juggernaut's shockwave punches, which rattled the entire foundation of the ground that the Institute was on. He channeled his chakra into the clouds, the sky darkened and rumbled loudly with thunder. The Juggernaut was barely able to blink before lightning poured out of the sky and formed a lightning bolt that decimated half of the forest. He was hurt by it, but only for a moment. Naruto felt the bastard's power grow in proportion with the man's size. Naruto saw him raise his fist and knew that the punch would not just blow away the mansion, but the shockwave would likely destroy a good portion of Bayville as well. He could not allow this place to be damaged any further. Amanamanaka. The terrain swapped with one of his nastier dimensions. Juggernaut found himself falling into an expensive landfill composed only of mountainous regions that would continuously spew lava all around them. The air was hot and the ash seemed to cling to his every breath. Miraculously though, the boy who he was fighting was not at all affected. He punched the ground apart, blowing the mountain into pieces before he could fall into the magma chamber, but the earth wouldn't let him go, as tendrils kept him rooted into the ground. "What is this?" Kane growled. He wanted to go all out. "I've provided you with the opportunity." Naruto shouted, "Let's dance, you ugly brute." He slammed his hands together and the earth rumbled as a monstrous molten creature blew it apart to reach the surface. It swung its ugly rocky fist into Juggernaut who was launched through dozens of mountains. However, Naruto knew it wasn't enough to beat Juggernaut, but the mutant struggles were futile against his jutsu. The ability to animate his surroundings, twist them into something much more lifelike and control them for as long as he liked was only possible because this dimension was covered entirely with his chakra. The cost was so great that Naruto and Kagaya likely would have been the only ones who could use it without dying. Juggernaut had grown once more, he was around the size of Gamabunta now as he growled, "You bastard, that hurt." His armor was melted away and his skin was lacerated with burns. It seemed that despite the gem's increasing influence, Naruto's attack was hurting him much more here. That only worked to Naruto's advantage. He raised his palms and a black orb floated above Juggernaut. "Chibaku Tensei." He roared as he pumped the last amounts of chakra that he had into the technique. Pain Marco couldn't figure what had happened, his vision eclipsed by a blinding white light and a powerful pulling sensation. Then, the earth around him began to break apart and began to speed towards this tiny black sphere. It didn't take long for him to become consumed by it. His attempt to outrun the powerful gravitation field failed spectacularly as he was hoisted upside and flung towards the center of a molten moon-like blob. And before the Juggernaut could begin to try to move and escape his prison, Naruto flipped the gravitational switch. The planet-like monstrosity caught fire as it flew down towards the ground. The explosion that resulted from the collision was so grandiose and gargantuan that it consumed the majority of Naruto's dimension. Naruto had to hide in his portal to avoid being consumed by it, and the Juggernaut was forced to endure everything as the epicenter of the event. Naruto emerged a world of fiery debris and ash so thick that he could only see through it even with his Rinnegan. He was tired, his skin crawled and singed from the heat of the world around. Naruto hoped that the Juggernaut was dead. Except he wasn't. The faintest sounds of shallow breathing echoed throughout the crater, and as Naruto made his way through the hellish landscape to find a dazed Juggernaut. It was an impossibility that Naruto had not even considered. The mutant must have returned from his bones from the way his body was healing. There wasn't much time before he would regain his strength, and unlike Juggernaut, Naruto did not have an all-powerful entity powering him. What are you doing?" Juggernaut groaned out painfully. "Taking you to see your brother." He grabbed the mutant up by the hair and dragged him through a portal into the danger room. Naruto was forced to throw Juggernaut in the way of a powerful red bolt of energy as he was greeted by the dueling factions of the X-Men and Brotherhood. "Took you long enough, bub," Logan growled whilst raising his claws to slash through a piece of metal thrown towards him by the blob. Naruto ignored the fight, using his truth-seeking balls to block the bolts of energy being sent towards him by the mysterious auburn-haired teen. He dropped the Juggernaut unceremoniously in front of the professor. "He'll get up in a minute or so. I hope you can put him in a coma without that machine of yours." Charles Xavier was stunned at the state of his brother. He had done what he had thought was impossible. He had physically hurt the Juggernaut and to a point that he was barely conscious as well. He placed a hand on his stepbrother's temple and fought heavily against the magic of the gem to turn him comatose. Pietro tried to blitz Naruto from behind, intent on knocking him out, but Naruto simply caught his fist and crushed it. The motion happened so fast that the pained scream barely escaped the boy's lips when he hit the opposite wall of the danger room. Wanda Maximoff roared her brother's name as he hit the ground, unconscious and unresponsive to her words. Magic fizzed around madly. Green eyes burned with fury. "I'll kill you." Magic fizzed around madly. Green eyes burned with fury. "I'll kill you." Naruto could not recall the last time that he had been so tired before. He could tell that the fight with Juggernaut had left his chakra depleted and his body strained to the point that he was barely able to dodge the aftereffects of the girl's energy bolts. Her hexes had a maddening unpredictability to them. Wolverine had tried to sneak up on her but was sent flying back by Storm's lightning, the girl's hex functioning in such a manner that it practically defied all probability. Naruto grunted, "First Franklin and now you." Wanda attacked him first, flinging a bolt of hexed energy towards him. Naruto jumped back out of the way, chakra-enhanced speed, allowing him to twist his body and dash in one fluid motion. She was ill-prepared for his counter, but that accursed spell of hers seemed to have a mind of its own. Sharp metallic tendrils shot at him from behind. They avoided his truth-seeking balls and continued on their path, as if they were homing missiles. Naruto flipped around, slamming his hand onto the ground and summoning an earth dome around him. The tendrils burrowed into the dome and just before they pierced into his body, he used a Menetejiker to swap places with Wanda. The girl's pained scream echoed all across the room, everyone stopped fighting as they looked on in shock at what Naruto had just done. A dozen or so metallic spears pierced into her body, her green eyes widened, blood poured from her mouth and onto the ground. How come she was here? No. Mystique roared out, her hands grasped the bony spears holding her hostage and in a show of athleticism or luck, dodged Storm's lightning. It took her a mere moment to reach Wanda, she glared angrily over her shoulder, are you insane? Are you trying to kill her? Just like you were trying to kill us. If it were not for me, Juggernaut would have killed everyone in this place. Mystique felt the boy's energy flare up, it was as dark as the abyss and it hung around everyone in the room like a bloody mantle. Mystique had always prided herself in keeping composure even when faced with death, and yet her body froze stricken with fear that glittered her slitted eyes. She had never felt so much murderous intent in her life. Enough, Naruto. Xavier muttered, you need to calm yourself. You're too forgiving, Professor. They walked into your home, destroyed it, and you want to let them walk away. Naruto said sharply. They must understand that such an invasion will not be tolerated again. I know, we will not be so merciful next time. I agree with Blonde. Logan growled, shaking an unconscious Avalanche from his arms, they'll just come back, Magneto won't be so trigger happy if we send Mystique in a. No. The professor said curtly. And sourly. We aren't executioners, this is not our way. If we allow ourselves to be corrupted by vengeance, we are no better than Magneto. No better than the humans that hunt us. He had seen what would become of them if mutants had followed Magneto's radical path, he could not let happen. The world could not withstand a war between two species, another dance of bloodied ideals, and vengeance would doom them all. Naruto grimaced as he made his way to Wanda's still form. He had not intended to kill anyone, he preferred to simply scare them from trying such an act again. The Brotherhood had all but been captured by the members of the X-Men, Pietro was unconscious, Toad was hanging from the ceiling by his long amphibious tongue. The blob was being held in a telekinetic bubble, and Logan had hammered Avalanche mercilessly across the yard before the walking earthquake could topple the building onto their heads. And finally Wanda. The girl who had been the one to defeat the X-Men was mortally wounded by her own hex. Naruto could feel her suffering in her pain, his empathetic abilities had grown exponentially during his tutelage under Xavier. He did the only thing that he could by placing his yang seal onto the girl's stomach and allowing his chakra to flow into her. Metal tentacles were slowly pushed out of her body as the once open sores began to close up. What are you? Mystique asked, unable to grasp just how powerful Naruto was. She had met her fair share of powerful mutants, but in the brief time she had observed him, he had shown more powers than everyone present. What sort of monster in man's flesh was this boy? Xavier didn't have any idea of the treasure he had in his possession. A mutant with such versatility was unheard of, she would have to report this to Magneto. So much power and yet you remain a slave to Xavier's cause. She spat out onto the ground in anger. Do not presume too much, woman, Naruto said sharply, I am not forced to do anything's bidding that is after all more of your ilk's mode of action. Charles and I share something of a vision, but where I differ is Red Eyes spun madly in Mystique's vision and she felt rooted to where she stood. Her tongue stuck to the roof of her mouth and the hairs on her skin prickled upwards as her entire world devolved into the void. I am not so merciful. Mystique was struck mute, a silent scream played upon her lips before she crumpled onto the ground in a motionless heap. Naruto grabbed the shapeshifter by the scruff of her neck and threw her towards the Brotherhood, be gone now unless you wish to suffer your master's fate. There was barely any discussion, their defeat had been so assured despite the fact that they had been winning before Naruto's arrival. Heads hung low, they marched out of the largely demolished mansion, nursing injuries and their broken pride. It was funny just how thin the margin between victory and defeat was, between life and death. You placed her in a psychic coma? Xavier asked, wheeling towards Kurt's still form, grimacing at the mangled shape his arm was in. Naruto shrugged, I did no such thing, that was her body's natural reaction to dealing with sensory overload. The professor's eyes hardened, it would speak to insanity to confront Naruto after what had befallen his students. Naruto is right, I cannot allow such a thing to happen again. He would have to go on the offensive for once and he knew just how to do it. Dealing the body was a matter of ease for someone with Naruto's abilities, but matters of the mind proved far too great for him. Naruto watched the mute student sulk and shiver as they discussed what happened during the battle. I failed. Cyclops stood wringing his hands. I thought that they had come to assist us in defeating Juggernaut, but he cast a side eye towards Kurt and Rogue, who had sustained the majority of the injuries in the skirmish. Rogue had been the first to be ambushed, he assumed it was Mystique who had planned to take her out first, but to do it in such a grotesque fashion. I had not expected them to turn on us. Naruto glared at the boy. I believe it was I who made the judgment to bring them into the plane. The responsibility lies solely on my shoulders. That would have been the doing of young Wanda. Charles's soft voice echoed in front of them. She has a talent in bending the minds of others, not so much different from telepathy. But that isn't what is important, you all fought bravely, and that's all that matters. Then why did we lose? Jean whispered. Wanda Maximoff is an Omega-class mutant. Charles said grimly, meeting her eyes. Unfortunately, like her father, her power seems to encompass something that is present in all of our lives. The law of entropy is such that over time all systems will descend into chaos. Wanda simply speeds up the process. Storm's eyes widened. You mean to say she is a warper? The shock that was plastered on Jean and Scott alarmed some of the younger students who were unfamiliar with the term. Not quite on the level of Franklin, Naruto nodded, but from what I have observed, her ability to manipulate chaos allows her to bend the rules of reality a little. Thankfully, she is untrained and is only able to use her powers as a projectile, otherwise none of you would have been to put a fight. Naruto is correct. Luck was on your side today. Wanda is capable of far more destruction than any of you are privy to. A voice spoke from the ground. The world spun and twisted in a mirror-like fashion before it spat out one Dr. Stephen Strange. I am afraid the only recourse is to seal her. She is far too powerful to allow to roam freely. That will not happen, Stephen. Charles said with some clear frustration. Eric would destroy the city if you ever tried to do that. For now, Wanda is not to be touched. Naruto agreed. Order is the foremost aspect taught in Fuinjutsu. Without it, the effect would be unpredictable and incredibly dangerous. He remembered quite clearly the words of Iro Sennin about sealing and why most shinobi never bothered learning it. Her powers would likely disrupt your array and cause it to backfire. Strange hummed, twirling his mustache in contemplation. What do you propose then? Admittedly, he was not as experienced with seals as Naruto was. His theory about the degeneration of the runic array over time was somewhat accurate. However, there was the added problem of Magneto. The master of magnetism wasn't the type to take grievances lying down. Best to let sleeping dogs lie, Doc. Naruto replied, besides we're not in exactly the best situation to go after them anyway. True to his words, the institute and indeed the woods surrounding had been largely destroyed, razed to the ground by the uncontrolled skirmish that had happened an hour ago. Oh, this. Dr. Strange's eyes twinkled with mirth, twisting his hands in an anti-clockwise motion. A green gem peeked from within the necklace on his neck. It should only take a minute. Slowly but surely all the debris began to return to their original form. Stones reverted back to bricks, sand to glass. It was an eye-widened experience as Sorcerer Supreme returned the environment around them back to how it was. How did he do it? Naruto was certain it was through the manipulation of localized time, something no one back home had ever been able to accomplish. He shuddered just imagining what Madara or worse Orochimaru could accomplish with such an ability. Thank you, Stephen. Charles said cautiously, if you are ever in need of something. You need only ask. Strange nodded. I shall keep that in mind. And with that he spun his hands around in a circular motion, allowing a portal to twist open in a slash of light and vanishing in one seamless motion. Professor. Where is Naruto? Kurt asked. The professor frowned at the empty spot where Naruto and Strange once stood. He wondered just what the man wanted from Naruto that he was unwilling to discuss with him. One thing was for certain, Dr. Strange wasn't the type to ask for help unless absolutely necessary. He escaped. Naruto asked curiously, I believed he would, but my seal should have held for at least a year. Strange grimaced. He placed the ashes of the scroll in front of the mirror. Naruto's eyes widened when he felt the echoes of pain and desperation that reverberated from his seal. He hurt himself. Naruto muttered in shock, I've never felt anyone so afraid that they would damage their own soul to escape. I have felt a shift recently. Strange drew a deep breath. He was beginning to look no longer calm, but uneasy. Rare and powerful magical objects are appearing all around the world in the hands of criminals who wouldn't think twice about sacrificing their soul for more power. The walls between the mystical and the mundane are falling. That is why Nightmare was afraid. Naruto raised an eyebrow, but Nightmare is immortal. He cannot be killed, what could possibly make him afraid? I am not sure, but I found an artifact that I thought you might be familiar with. He pointed to a group of broken fragments on the table. They are in Japanese, belong to the Amatsukami if I am not mistaken. To Dr. Strange, they appeared as nothing but rubble inscribed with kanji, but Naruto fitted them together deftly, making a circular stone-looking object. I don't know what it is, but it's filled with natural energy. Strange grasped the object and inspected it. He had spent weeks trying to fuse the fragments together with his magic, but to no avail. And Naruto had done it with his bare hands. No magic was needed for it to become whole. So, it was as I thought, you are indeed chosen by the Shinto. He traced the runes on the disc, letting the energy flow through him. It's made from sunstone and likely came from the Sengoku period. I suspect it is a key for something. The key to. Naruto's question was met with Strange simply waving the object like a lunatic. The man's spells always involved a lot of gesturing. I have no idea. He passed the rune back to Naruto, his lips quirked upwards in an amused smile when the disc began to react in Naruto's hand. But it seems to be directing you to its treasure. Naruto looked at the black and red stone in his hand glowing with greater intensity. A harsh pull from his navel indicated that it was drawing upon not his chakra, but Kurama's. That's impossible. He thought. There shouldn't have been any object designed to function with chakra on this planet, but he had found one. He smiled at the sorcerer. I will work on trying to uncover the meaning of the runes. I thank you, Doc. Dr. Strange raised a quizzical eyebrow as if he had not understood the hidden meaning behind Naruto's words. It's safer in your hands besides, it would have just been rotting away in my collection anyway. Naruto nodded, he opened a rift by his side and stored the object away in one of his pocket dimensions. Strange gave him a card that would summon him back to the sanctum before he departed. By the time he exited the sorcerer's home, his mind was spinning for the maze of corridors and shifting rooms. It was like the building was alive, and worse, messing with him as he tried to leave. Finding himself once more in the city of New York, Naruto contemplated what he should do before heading back towards the Xavier Institute. Night fell as he walked through a dozen or so streets unconsciously making his way to Manhattan. The city folk stood in bunches, talking and staring at him as he passed them onto the street. He wondered for a moment if this all due to his unique facial features or if Jessica had told the truth and he had indeed become something of a famous figure. Oh shit. Naruto thought as he saw a group of excitable teenagers making their way towards him. Their approach was halted by the revving of a loud engine and a sleek convertible parked right beside him. Bed in. Johnny Storm smirked at his fellow blonde with a knowing expression. Naruto hopped over the door and plopped himself on the comfortable leather seat. It barely took Johnny a second later to drive off. I thought I spotted you, he said as he gazed at Naruto's form. I see you still haven't gotten used to our fashion yet. Naruto grunted, I just got into a fight with an unstoppable juggernaut and a temperamental teenager who can manipulate reality. The juggernaut? Johnny asked, shocked. You fought that monster, and you look like that. There wasn't a single tear in Naruto's flowing black and yellow robes, but that was a testament to Naruto's chakra rather than the strength of his garments. Where are we going? Naruto asked as they passed the Baxter building. Johnny simply grinned, ever been to a masquerade before? He shook his head, though he had a feeling that whatever it was wouldn't be to his taste. You love it, Johnny replied. Naruto very much doubted that would be the case. Mystique awoke with a start, bleary eyes barely making out the familiar ceiling of her living room. What happened? She groaned out, not particularly sure if anyone was by her side. We got our asses beat, that's what happened. Toad said unhelpfully. Shut up, Toad, Pietro sneered, your plan failed, Mystique. Magneto came here and took Wanda to wherever it is he is holed up. We almost succeeded, you know, if that bastard didn't appear out of nowhere, Lance argued. But you could have warned us that Xavier had someone like him on his side. Mystique shivered, pulling her blanket tightly over her body as she recalled the technique that the boy had used on her. It felt so real, Mystique could have sworn that she had died 100 times in that world. I underestimated Xavier. It won't happen again. She felt weak and lightheaded, yet strangely resolute in her words. Pietro remained unconvinced. He was after all the only one on this team that had not been recruited by Mystique. And how do you propose we beat them? He raised his broken hand wrapped in a homemade cast. He was toying with us, he could have killed us all, and we would have never been able to stop him. And therein lies our small difficulty. Mystique gazed at her students, her yellow eyes unblinking and filled with anger. Xavier is recruiting powerful mutants at such a speed that soon none of you will be able to compete with the X-Men. It did not help that had it not been for Wanda, the X-Men would have wiped the floor on her young charges. They weren't just better drilled but more cohesive as a unit. Even Scott Summers, who had always been quick to anger and thus prone to making rash judgments, appeared to be in control of himself. The blob grunted, we could take them. Toad and Lance echoed their agreements, isn't that right, Pietro? He asked expectantly. You can't, Mystique laughed harshly at them. I'm not even sure any of you will be able to beat Nightcrawler at the moment, let alone Grey or Storm. The only reason you could even put up a fighting chance was because Wanda was messing with their powers. What would you have us do then? Lance questioned airily. I'm going to train all of you until you can't feel your legs, declared Mystique with a sadistic grin. Magneto will not tolerate another failure, and I fear that today's events have worn his patience thin. She knew that they didn't have the firepower to compete with the X-Men, but that doesn't mean that they were completely outmatched. After all, if history had taught her anything it was that the strongest side did not always win the war. Especially one that was as moralistic as Xavier's. Hidden away in the bustling nightlife of Manhattan was the Hellfire Club. The club was located in an antique yet somewhat modern building. It was very out of the way for something that boasted two among the most exclusive places in the world. Johnny mentioned that the only people that were allowed access were models, famous people and those who were rich enough to lot in the pockets of the owners with gold. The bouncer recognized Johnny, he allowed them entry, but not before briefly mentioning that someone known as the Dazzler would be performing today. "Oh. You're going to love her," Johnny said as he pushed the apprehensive Naruto through the door. "Ali's performances are one of a kind." Naruto groaned as he was bombarded with an oversaturation of white and gold, finely dressed white stone made up the floor, whilst gold decorated almost every part of the foyer. Though this feature lessened as they headed deeper underground, the sound of music thumped louder and louder inside the elevator. Upon entering the main area of the club, Naruto was surprised by just how many people there were inside the Great Hall. Dressed in elegant or casual clothing, models and celebrities alike intermingled with the rich of New York and beyond. Some had chosen to wear masks that covered just a portion of their upper face, not particularly hiding their identity, whilst others had chosen to be far more cautious by wearing masks that covered the majority of their features. Naruto was not at all surprised when Johnny slipped him a half mask that barely covered over his eyes and his nose. Johnny patted Naruto on the back, his eyes had a mischievous glimmer to them. "I'm going to greet some friends, why don't you take this opportunity to get to know some of Manhattan's elite?" And just like that, Naruto stood in a hall full of dancing people. Too crowded, he thought. Left alone, he might be able to sneak out with Johnny noticing. He took a seat by the bar and watched in interest as lights shimmered all around the singer on the stage. It was an odd spectacle as the woman used what he assumed was her power to manipulate the light around her to fit the mood of the song. "You don't look too comfortable, is the party not up to your standards?" Naruto turned his head and looked at the pretty purple-haired woman with a pair of light violet eyes. "I'm fine." The woman simply chuckled, "You are different from most newcomers, you don't seem at all interested in trying to get your 5 seconds of fame. Don't care much for fame. I can tell." She smiled a violet-eyed, red-lipped smile at him. A knowing smile made Naruto believe that she felt out of sorts here as well. "Though I must ask, if you're not here for pleasure and not business, then what are you here for?" Naruto shrugged. He felt a stab in his mind, an accurate pincer that almost managed to find its way through his walls and would have had he not been around Xavier for so long. Why did he always end up in these situations? "That's not going to work against me," he said. "I would advise against trying to read strangers' mind, you might find that some are far more protective about their privacy than others." There was a threatening tilt to his words that made the woman wave her hand in resignation. "Sorry, a habit of mine. I'm Betsy Braddock." Naruto had been almost certain that the woman was Japanese, but her name indicated otherwise. "Uzumaki Naruto." He offered whilst touching his mask, "though I wonder if exchanging personal details defeats the purpose of these." "I'm sure you can handle yourself." Betsy grinned at him, "You carry yourself like a soldier despite being a few years younger than me." Appearances can be deceiving. He opened a black rift near him and drew out a bottle of sake and 2 cylindrical cups to her surprise. "You'll find that to some that time is unmoving." Betsy had assumed that the boy in front of her had powers that were psionic in nature. It wasn't uncommon after all, to possess some form of weak telepathy that couldn't be detected by another telepath. But instead, he appeared to have shown that he could open rifts in space, and if what he was saying was to be believed, that he was far older than he seemed. "You're a mutant as well?" she asked in slight surprise. It was a rare sight to meet someone like herself. "So, you were one," he muttered to himself. "I wonder how you managed to escape being detected by Cerebro." Surely, Charles would know that a powerful telepath was walking around in New York, or perhaps this girl's ability was so fine-tuned that she was able to avoid detection. Betsy grimaced as her phone buzzed, her eyes narrowing at the message sent to her. "Hate to cut the conversation short, but looks like I am needed elsewhere." She slinked her way back into the dancefloor, losing herself in the crowd until she became just another nameless partygoer. Naruto had a bad feeling that she was about to get herself into trouble. Sebastian Shaw sat inside his office located directly above the hall. The dull thud of the music below was drowned out by 2 women shouting at each other in front of his desk. "Quiet," he hissed, "I have had enough of your bickering." Despite glaring harshly at him, both of the women seemed to stop their argument. "Celine, I believe I made it clear that Sage was in charge of recruitment." Sage's red glasses constantly flashed with information, frowning at what she found. "There is no need to induct a new telepath into our ranks. Besides, she manipulated her glasses to project a holographic image of Betsy, she might belong to the hand." Celine spun around towards Shaw's personal aide. "You allowed an assassin into our home." Energy began to bubble from her hands. "I ought to teach that wench a lesson." Sage sighed at Celine's temper. "Do you really want to risk a war with the hand?" She began to type something in a terminal. A message popped up in front of them all. "Seems like Donald has run afoul the wrong people." "How much?" Shaw asked. His business has been cutting into their margins quite a bit, they're down by at least a half this quarter. Donald cannot die. Shaw growled, I don't care what you do, make it quick and silent. Celine's bloodthirsty grin was enough to draw shivers from both of them. I will handle her on my own. It hadn't taken long for Betsy to find Donald Pierce's location, hidden away in his own lounge. The fat oaf was busy enjoying the delicacies of the club's more private services. Pierce raised his head, licking his lips as he saw Betsy standing in front of the door. You're new, he never stopped moving his hips as he stared at Betsy's form. Shaw must be really desperate if he's sending me one of his new starlets. Silex sauntered closer to him, her hips sashayed erotically with each movement whilst she took the knife from behind her. The man had an idiotic grin on his face, unaware of the fate that would befall him in a moment. Come here and I'll show you a good time. Is that so? Betsy questioned as he rose from the seat, dumping another girl to his side. And that was all she needed before with one accurate throw, her knife dashed towards his heart. But instead of reaching his heart, the knife simply spun upwards and stabbed itself into the ceiling. Donald Pierce appeared haggard and in shock by what had just happened. It was clear that this was the doing of the woman that had appeared in front of his chair. You're not a very good assassin, are you? Celine questioned with a mocking tone, did you really think we wouldn't notice you walking around like a lost puppy? There was barely any time for Betsy to barrel roll out of the way as a black jet of energy sparked out of Celine's hand. The carpet around her shifted, coiling itself around her like a snake. Her telekinesis acting out instinctively to avoid being placed in a python choke. Celine grinned at the girl's lack of awareness. The knife from the ceiling fell and spiraled down towards her back as Betsy continued to fight against the animated ropes of marble and carpet. Clang. Something deflected Celine's blade from killing Betsy. A blonde-haired man landed beside her. I thought you were going to get yourself in trouble. Who are you? Celine growled with some apprehension. Her mutant power was one that allowed her to absorb the life force of anyone she touched. As such, she had naturally developed the ability to read people's life force, and this one's life force was so powerful and radiant that she could feel it from where she stood. It was as if he was a living star of energy. Betsy whispered, what are you doing here? Saving your life, he judged the woman before him with slight interest. She was trying to draw his chakra into herself. Celine dashed towards them with alarming speed, intent on touching Naruto and absorbing his life force. Bisatsu Haimzum, certain kill eye spears. Dozens of eye spears pierced from the ground and burrowed themselves into Celine. Blood poured onto the white and Betsy asked, is she dead? Naruto didn't get any time to reply as Celine's body simply melted away and reformed elsewhere in the room. Impressive. She said as she inspected the energy that the ice was made out with a grin. I know, it's a little bit more spiritual than that. Tell me boy, have you ever heard of Kunlun? Huh? Kun what now? Naruto questioned. No matter. Celine replied, her energy flaring as the ice crackled and burst apart, you will fall just like they did. That will not be happening today. A monotonic voice spoke through one of the terminals in the room, I would advise against making enemies of us Elizabeth Braddock. After all, it is my understanding that your twin brother does not possess the gifts that you do. She's under my protection. Naruto replied, somewhat harshly, and you're not the only one who has powerful contacts. Noted, Mr. Uzumaki. We have no quarrels with the Avengers or the Fantastic Four, there is no need for you to get involved. Besides, you will find that we are not the instigators but the wronged. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the terminal. Reed Richards and Xavier had worked hard on keeping his identity unknown, but it seemed that this mysterious person had managed to bypass both of their security systems without them knowing. That made whoever they were very dangerous, perhaps even more so than the vampire in front of him. We are leaving. A black rift opened up behind Naruto and Betsy, swallowing them up before stitching itself back together. Celine sneered at the naked man cowering behind the sofa. Get dressed you, oaf, Shaw wants to have a word with you. She disappeared in a show of light, leaving a confused and angered Pierce to recollect his thoughts. Mutants were dangerous. Trask had been right all along. Trask, it's Pierce. He grasped his phone a little tighter as he realized just how powerless he was against them. Where are we with the Sentinels project? Just a few weeks away from launch. Donald Pierce smiled sadistically, good. I think I found us the perfect lab rat to test it on. What if Naruto beyond Omega level mutant end here, and thanks for watching my video till the end.